Hello guys, this is Gabriel Falling from Team SK Gaming.
Okay, this is episode 33 of Counterpoints. So we're up to the Scottie Pippen number now, Moses. And I know obviously you can relate to Scottie Pippen, you know, a guy who came along, he stood next to greatness, but he never could be that greatness himself. The best he could do was really ride the coattails of greatness and a great career, and kind of imitate some of the qualities of the band he was next to, but never quite accomplish them. But in his own right, be pretty good as he is.
But he still has a giant fucking bank of Skrilla, so it doesn't matter in the end, as long as you're making that money. Like Henry G says,
okay, no
matter what happens, you're still getting paid.
I mean, if only that really was his philosophy, eh? But enough in jokes behind the scenes. So this week, Moses, by the way, show as usual, sponsored by Boomeo and all that. Speaking of Skrilla, they pay me a lot. Don't even know why I said that. It's not like they're a money counting organization. In fact, they're not even fantasy esports. They're just guides. They've got servers you can play on. They pay a dren, so you know they're already making bank, and they know they can afford to reinvest that. So now we'll go to our guests. So this one, Moses. Now you know how you have your Counter-Strike son. His name is Kuster. Hallowed be that name. And I can't lie. At this point, you might want to disown him. You might just want to go for a pack of cigarettes, come back in about 17 years.
I'm all in on Kusta. We're celebrating birthdays. We're doing all the good shit.
Okay. Well, you've got your Counter-Strike son, Moses, but I've got a few of my own. But you have to understand, I'm not a loving father like you. I don't extend the arm. I don't tell them good job, etc. What I do is I very much like my relationship with my Counter-Strike sons is kind of like the Emperor with his Sith trainees, okay? Like, I put them in precarious situations. I threaten their very existence, and the only way they will ever get to the top is by destroying me. So all I'm going to say is I'm throwing them in at the deep end here. I've got two of them on at once. I'm already pitting them against each other, essentially, and we will see who is actually my real favourite son or not, and then the other one will be banished from the land.
You're the Joker. You're breaking the fucking pool stick, and you're like, we're going to have tryouts. Here we go.
But here's the thing, though. I know that now they know this is their ultimate test, okay? But they've probably naively thought, like, it's going to go well, you know, people are going to respect me as an analyst and that. But you have to understand, just because you make it to the top of the dojo doesn't mean you're going to beat the Kung Fu Master. It might be that first act of the movie. He might just send you away a broken man and you have to, like, rebuild yourself. So just because, listen, I'm sure all those little younglings in the fucking Jedi Academy thought they were going to be sick Jedi Masters until a fucking Sith Lord rolled up and slayed all those little bitches because they couldn't hang. If they'd have had some sort... By the way, that just shows how garbage that last movie was. So those little kids have been learning Force powers all those years. They couldn't beat Anakin Skywalker, but that fucking absolute G.I. Joe female character just did all Sith shit without any training. Get the fuck out of my face. Anyway, that's the end of the Star Wars discussion, by the way, in case anyone was wondering there. Don't jump in on that part. So our guests for this week, Moses, in this order, and let's see what that means, is... So the one I've known the longest is actually stuchiu. And that's the reason he has writer in his name. I thought maybe to somehow differentiate yourself. And
he'd be the Darth Maul of the two of them.
Yeah, that was the cooler one. Let's face it, he was the cooler one, at least initially. We'll see how it all works out. You know, there could be a twist. Could be a twist in the end for the other one. We'll see there. So yeah, stuchiu is someone who, for people who don't know, actually comes from StarCraft 2. And that was his game, and he was a StarCraft enthusiast, and that was basically the main game he was following, and then a bit of Dota. And for what people don't realise is, because Counter-Strike got so huge, and it's the ultimate crossover appeal game, basically. Like, I know people who watch League of Legends, who do Overwatch. Almost everyone has, like, Counter-Strike as their second game, pretty much, of the games that I'm aware of. He got to know a bit about Counter-Strike, and then the key thing is, because we have like one of the best circuits with so many tournaments and so many kind of opportunities to see great matches, he got kind of hooked by the narratives, you know, by the great stories that Counter-Strike produces. And so here he is now, trying to earn a crust as a Counter-Strike writer, and writes for Slingshot Esports at the moment. Now, our other guest, by the way, this isn't fucking Charlie Rose. There's no like, hello, how are you? How's your life going? There's none of that shit. Like, we're getting straight into it, okay? I'm the only one who's allowed extended, unnecessary rambling opening segments.
This next one is the Count Dooku of your apprentices.
Okay, well, that's kind of a diss, but fair enough. It came from Moses. Obviously, a little bit of that NA rivalry there, you know. I mean, anyone who actually thinks that Cloud9 wants Optic to win or Team Liquid to do well, like, get fucking real. They hate all those motherfuckers more than anyone on Reddit. So, the other guest on the show is WallabeeBeatle, or Scott Dalkey, as apparently he prefers to be known now. I think he's changed his name, kind of like Prince, you know, his actual official name. I always see it on .esports as Scott Dalkey, so obviously my mistake. I thought he'd chosen that name. Now, you know everyone who's a pro player, Moses, I'm sure you're included, usually says, like, you know, if I'd known I was going to become a pro player famous, I'd pick like a cooler alias, you know, I'd pick a different name. So it's even worse for WallabeeBeatle, right? Because not only was that clearly not a name that he ever planned, like there was no team of people around him building a fucking media empire. Like, WallabeeBeatle, that is the name we're going with. The kids love it. It's scoring very highly with the housewives. Like, there's no team ever came together and did that, Moses. But it's worse than that because he didn't even have a good setup on Twitter. He uses a fucking Pokemon as his actual avatar, and he, by the way, still uses it to this day. So
which Pokemon?
It's like some sort of crab shit or something.
Yeah.
Okay, there we go. So all I'm going to say is, listen, we've all made a lot of mistakes when we were younger. It's important to move past those. And in some ways, those early mistakes, as much as they limit us, they're the hurdles we have to overcome to achieve greatness. Much as I am the hurdle, all of you will have to overcome to achieve greatness in this conversation, right? Okay, so start the episode. Unlike a lot of the past episodes, I want to kind of announce like a little bit of a different direction for the show. Because I do like a weekly show now for Boomeo, which is basically just me giving my thoughts on what's happened in the tournaments and like the, you know, very day-to-day stuff. It's made me think about this show, and I think actually we maybe got a bit too bogged down in that, Moses. Like, it's one thing if for example, if there's a big result at a tournament or a key matchup, yeah, we're going to analyze it, and obviously people want to know what you think. But the way, if you remember how I originally designed this podcast, it didn't used to be like a weekly show. It used to be a show where it was kind of like a salon. I just got together 2 or 3 people I thought were cool, and then we usually actually had a set topic in mind that we talked about. So I'm not going to do it as strict as that, but in general, I want it to be a bit more like the last episode, where we have a few topics we touch on, and then people kind of run with that, and we really see what everyone thinks, and then we mix it up that way. So I actually want to do something I've never done before, which is I'm going to let one of the guests pick a topic to start with. You see?
Shit.
I told you, I'm going full fucking, this is like the Sith test at this point in time. So I've got a question for you, stuchiu, crafter of narratives, would-be writer extraordinaire, StarCraft 2 pleb, hater of Koreans, subconsciously, I don't know where that's all going. So here's my question for you, stuchiu. If you had a chance to talk to the best analyst in the world and Moses, what topic would you want to talk about first? Come on. What's on your mind at the moment? Asian, of course. Thinking about it, of course. No one's grading you on this. Just pick a topic.
Listen, Darth Maul never said a word in that movie. So
No, he did say, "Alas, it's time to reveal ourselves to the Jedi." Listen, Moses, I know your favorite shit.
Look at you. You're a closet little nerd, aren't you? You've been ripping on me this whole time. It's because you just feel fucking betrayed by that trilogy.
I do. And I will just point out, that wasn't actually even his voice. It was the voice of a different person entirely. The actual actor never did that. The actor who also played Toad in X-Men 2, X2. Now, I've given you enough time to filibuster there, Stuchiu. Please give me a topic.
All right. The thing I'm thinking about right now is the fucked up economy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Basically, I think, was it 1 to 2 years ago, I went to Blizzard for the SC2 convention or something. Okay. It's basically under NDA, but the first time I went, I basically decided I'd probably never go again because I felt it was completely useless. And it's kind of get the same feeling I get when I'm dealing with Valve now. It's like we're on completely different wavelengths. The philosophy of game design is completely different from theirs. I don't know what the fuck they're thinking half the time. Like, I'm not actually sure they understand how a game should flow in terms of like a narrative or design or any of that at the top level. I'm not even sure they even care about the top level. So that's something I've been grappling with because they're always so silent. I'm not actually sure what the hell they're thinking most of the time. So that's what I'm thinking about.
No, that's actually always a problem as well, because if you notice, there's always a certain sentiment in the community, like, oh, don't bash on Valve too much, because then no wonder they don't, like, first of all, they use some sort of mad cart before horse logic of, like, maybe that's why they don't talk to us. What? Because they saw into the future when I bashed them. Like, that makes no fucking sense. And then the other logic that people use is, like, if you speculate too much, maybe that's not why Valve did it. It's like, there's an easy way to solve that, isn't it? If they were just a bit more forthright, or it doesn't even have to be everyone, you know. If they just picked one person, like, I don't know, Semler or something, and said, right, he's the person who'll kind of come to us and bring the community's opinions, at least we'd have some sort of insight. Like, it's sometimes when you find out why someone does something, it doesn't matter that you don't agree. There's a logic to it. Like, I'll give you a perfect example. There've been many times where, like, MSL has told me, this is going to be our best map then. I was like, there's no chance that's happening. And it didn't, by the way. I was always right. But I did understand his reasons when he tried to explain them. Like, there were reasons there that if you put them through, like, a sort of, like, a really large Danish forehead that looks like a guy who's, like, about 38. He's got his mortgage. He's got another fucking kid on the way. He thought he was done with all that. He can barely pay for these ones, you know. And it's just come home from the foundry. They've told him there's going to be redundancy in a few weeks. If you put through that sort of a head, then what you'd come out with is him thinking, like, Inferno will be their best map in the old lineup, okay? So let me ask you this, Stuchiu. Aside from the general concept of, like, the economy's fucked up, Valve don't know how to do it, is there something specific right now that's, like, bothering you? What's making this such a pressing matter for you?
The idea that like there are multiple things they could work on. Like, they're basically, when I think about game design, or when I think about writing, or when I think about strategy, there's a priority list where you have to choose what you want to focus on at any time. Yeah. And then of all the things they decided to focus on, they decided we needed more NEGV. That's what bothers me the most.
That is bold. That is very bold. Don't forget, though, there was the gloves. They gave us them gloves as well.
There was the gloves. I guess they wanted money first before they wanted the NEGV.
Okay.
I would be careful with that, just because the NEGV is I mean, they came out and said, and I mean, it obviously remains to be seen if they're going to follow through, that that's a temporary change just so they can get it used more, just so they can see where it's at. I think they'll end up increasing the price. I think they will, right? And I think that's part of the issue as well that you're entirely correct on, is since we don't fucking know what they're thinking ever, you can't ever be sure of what they're going to do. Maybe they find that they think the NEGV is perfect at the price where it's at, and then we get to see the pro community start messing with it and see how they're going to use it. And that's always the issue, is things being balanced for the casual community. And by the way, like, I can understand that to a certain degree, and I think in this day and age, in order to have an esport that we see continue to grow, there do have to be concessions made to the casual community, but I think we've gone too far that way in CSGO at the moment. I think there does need to be some ground given to the professional arm, which is essentially one giant marketing feature for this game. I don't think this game is nearly as successful, even with skins, if there's not an esport that has a history and built around the game. I think that's one weird interaction that I think Counter-Strike has that very few other games have as an esport in a competitive title.
So Moses, do you actually care about the NEGV change? Like, I realise we're not going to see it anyway because tournaments have just banned it. But did you actually think it would ever be used? Do you think there would be any kind of overpowered nature that someone would figure something out, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I think given enough time, you'll find pro teams, find some way to use it. Because I mean, the thing is, when we describe it as a laser beam after the first 15 bullets, that's not an exaggeration. That is the most accurate spray after 15 bullets. So people can warm it up. And I mean, think of it like you can almost use it like an extended smoke, right? Where if you're just spraying that laser beam at a corner, it's like no one can really cross into that. And you have 150 bullet clip, I think it is. But I mean, essentially 130 bullets of a laser beam going right at a corner. And it's like, who's going to peek into that? You can just delay takes. You can do a lot of damage. You can do massive damage. So, I mean, certainly the pro community would find a way. I think the interesting thing to see if there's any kind of if there's anything like the tomfoolery, as we may call it, is if Valve keep it this way going into the major, because pro leagues have banned it, but I mean, if it's going to be available to use at $2,000 at the major, which is when Valve decides what's allowed and what's not allowed, if you're a pro team, why wouldn't you be practicing it on the back burner, try and find something out, some way to use it?
See, here's the thing. Like, I personally already had my skepticism as to whether it would really be used, like, beyond some very niche. Like, for example, what you said there, I would basically tie that in and think the only real context it would be a very good weapon in is, like, say you hold the banana on Inferno and there's 35 seconds, then you just start firing the gun indiscriminately down the banana, and it makes it kind of near impossible to get up there. That's, like, a very niche use, though. And I also think, inadvertently, Valve has actually, like, it's almost like they've created this problem to make the UMP not seem that bad, because it's like, look, everyone will just buy a UMP instead, so why would anyone buy a NEGV? It's like, sort of, I guess that sort of makes sense, but I've got a way to take stuchiu's paltry effort at an opening topic, which I'm going to grade like a 6 out of 10. I'm going to take that, and I'm going to show you what happens when you perform Alkahi and gate that shit, and I'm going to spin it into pure gold. Stuchiu, watch this. Okay. So here's a better question about the economy, is with the economy being so abusive the last few months, like, it's not just that teams did the Tech 9 buys, you know, that all went back months and months and months, and there was a pretty good balance between teams who did that and teams who didn't. But the UMP added into it means that now you get ridiculous mixed low econ buys of Tech 9s and UMPs, or 3 UMPs and 2 rifles that seem like almost as good as having 4 or 5 AKs. So there's the question for you, Wallaby. Which teams do you actually think of the elite teams have benefited from this, like, ridiculous force buy? Do you think it's actually, like, helped some teams and hurt some teams? Is there any that come to mind?
Well, that's the thing. Like, when I think about it, I think, like, the way the economy works now is it's not just the guns. I think it's actually just, like, the way the teams have just reformed recently. It's like, well, there's all this extra skill in these lineups, these quote unquote super teams. So I mean, you think of teams like SK, FaZe, the new Fnatic. I mean, like, just like Deagle force buys and force buys with the UMP seem much more effective. Like SK with Fur and Phelps, they're much more aggressive, so they can use the UMPs. FaZe can obviously use the Deagles. So yeah, I think that's an issue as well.
I think obviously it's helped, like, a team like FaZe pretty decent amount. That's not to say I think they would have any significant, like, any huge drop off if they got nerfed a little bit. But I think the crazy thing to watch is, you know, we just watched a game in Pro League where FaZe was, like, Kerrigan had an AK-47 and a Tech 9 in a round, and Kerrigan switched to the Tech 9 to attack a bomb site because you can stay mobile with it. Went on to the next map, and they were on overtime on Inferno. And first round of overtime, when you have $10,000, one of the players chose to buy a UMP instead of an AK-47. And it's just things like that. But I mean, here's the real vicious part of the economy that I don't think a lot of people have talked about, is all the different money bonuses. Because we're in a situation now where you don't have a choice. You used to be able to argue one way or the other. You know, if you could, you know, if it was a good idea to force buy on the second round, if you lose pistol, we're at a position now where in some cases, like, you don't even have the choice anymore, because with all the SMGs and with the extra money bonus, if you don't force buy into that, if you don't do economic damage, they're going to make so much money with the SMG bonus money that their economy is going to be so difficult to break and hurt early on. And that's the real issue. It's like this vicious cycle where you have to buy to keep money low, but you never quite have enough money to be confident in, you know, in breaking around. I mean, it happens, but it can be such a weird cycle where if you never actually break the economy, like, you just never have enough money to actually do it. And teams can just build up so much bank that makes them so difficult to kind of get out of that momentum. It's no longer momentum. It's just the economy, the nades they have that you don't get access to. It is so vicious.
See, that's what's weird, though. That just shows how counterintuitive some of these factors are. I'll give Valve credit in as much as this aspect, right? In theory, if you have UMPs because you won the pistol round and you're just farming up cash, then in theory you should get broken less and get your money reset less. Therefore, you should have loads of money. Therefore, there shouldn't be loads of force buys from both teams constantly. So I actually kind of think it's like a bit of both. Like, I agree with WallabeeBeatle in that sense. Like, I think the problem there is that if it was like normal teams of players doing that, I think the economy would almost function. The problem is, when I have the UMP and I'm trying to farm up, it's like Nico with the Deagle. That's the real problem, because obviously they can do absurdly extraordinary stuff to you that you can't really account for when you balance that gun. Like that's actually something kind of to tie into what stuchiu says. Like, no matter who it is who balances the weapons at Valve, unless they really follow the pro scene, they have no clue what some of these players can do with the Deagle. Like, if I use a Deagle, I'm not that good. I have to be fairly stationary, or I have to like spam the shots when they come around the corner. You know, I have to really. There's only a few spots I'm going to get a ridiculous like a scenario where I not only kill the guy but can kill the next guy and then get his. You know, like that's going to happen so rarely. But some of these pro players we know are exceptionally good, and that's why in history the teams that really abuse the force buys are nearly always the super skill laden teams. It was the LDLC back in the day. I mean, Fnatic obviously used the Tech Nines. Yeah, it's never really like the NIPs of modern day that abuse them. In fact, they're the ones who tend to complain, you know, and don't like it as much, you know.
They also happen to be like the biggest purists of all the teams we have in CSGO, obviously with like a big pedigree, you know, in Source and in 1.6 where the economy actually felt like it functioned in some kind of a way. And obviously growing up in that culture, they're going to be a little bit bothered by it.
They're certainly pure.
But yeah, I mean, it's just... It's gotten, it's just, I mean, it's almost like this argument's been beaten to a dead horse. I just feel like this is so much of this game. Like the thing that makes it unique is the economy. And if we don't have the economy, we're just some other shit shooter. And when you make these, this is the crux of the issue. And this is the issue that we can never solve, is that you can't balance a game competitively based off the large casual community, because things will never be balanced properly for the professional scene. And like, I mean, this was the entire concept, by the way, behind like some of the old ideas behind a pro mod for Counter-Strike when that was in development, when that was always a topic of conversation, is do we need a separate game than what's played casually, not for the game itself, but for like the settings used. And that's just going to further divide the community and make it more elitist. And then, and you can't have that. And so that's what's a little bit scary, is that there just doesn't seem to be any mind of what the professional competitions are like.
Okay, so stuchiu, did you have a point on that you want to make?
No, I was just going to say something about the UMP. Like,
okay, come on.
Strategically, it's one of the worst weapons I've ever seen.
Okay.
Like, what I mean by that is, okay, so here are all the situations you can buy the UMP in. You can buy it in a force buy, you can buy it to farm weapons, and you can buy it in a gun round, and it's viable in all 3 rounds because it has distinct advantages that no other gun can have. Sure. So essentially what's happening with the UMP is that when you use it, when you buy it, it's technically never a bad choice.
Yeah. I mean, it's essentially like making the Infestor in like StarCraft 2.
So it's very similar to the Infestor.
It's always a problem when you balance if it's never wrong, basically.
Yeah.
You buy the gun.
Yeah, that's like a huge problem for me, is like we're basically taking thought out of that particular weapon.
Yeah. Okay, so I've got a question for you along the lines. Like, this is a team that actually, they never really have abused any of the force buy weapons. This is Virtus.pro. So now that it's been 2 whole tournaments that Virtus.pro hasn't gone deep and has like had, I mean, what's interesting is that kind of each say they lost a lot of close games, but the games they lost at Star Series, that was embarrassing. They ended up with some ridiculous minus for the event in terms of rounds won. So now that it's been a couple of events, I think it's legitimate if someone said, like, I'm going in on the train that, like, VP's not coming back, or, like, they're never going to be the best again, or they're just going to be, maybe they'll just be decent. Like, what's your sense, Wallaby? Where do you think VP goes from here?
Yeah, if I had to buy, like, stock on a team, I'd actually buy Virtus.pro right now, because it seems like a lot of people are just counting them out because of the recency bias sort of thing going on, where, I mean, it's just so common. If you just look back tournament to tournament over repeats run together, they just have these little spurts where they're not good. They have the one tournament. I'm not super concerned. There's the concern that the super teams or the better teams that are now in the scene will sort of outshine them. Virtus.pro was sort of the best team during the uncertainty era, and they're like the second best team when Astralis started to get going. But I mean, I think they're still going to be a top 4 team. It seems like that's sort of the perpetual destiny of that team. It doesn't seem like I don't know what factor would cause them to suddenly drop off for eternity.
I mean, you actually made a very good point, I thought, in a video you did on this topic, which was that, like, it's actually bizarre when you think of this, but of all the teams in Counter-Strike right now, Virtus.pro on paper should have, like, the best map pool. They should have almost no disadvantage in any best of 3 that they play against anyone. But bizarrely, they have made some weird choices in their pick ban. So can you give us kind of the Cliff's notes of that? Like, in what sense, like, what give us an example of, like, a weird pick ban that they were doing that was not giving them the best chance to exploit this map pool, Well, the most recent one was that Starladder won versus Fnatic, I think. Was that their last game in the no, it was
they got
SK.
eliminated?
Wasn't it SK? Train? Am I thinking of the right one?
SK was on Mirage.
They all blend together.
I think the last one was on
double-check
Inferno. They somehow ended up on Inferno, and it just seemed like I think they banned Train and Overpass. I think Train
it was
and
Inferno.
Overpass. Yeah, and they it seemed like they just completely got their map pool was completely shaken. If you go back to the very beginning of the year, they seem to have a lot of they always want to go to maps like Cache or something like in the middle of their map pool and make their opponent go to a weakness. Then versus Gambit at DreamHack, they're really confident they actually played Gambit on Cobble, and then they actually just picked banned correctly, I thought, at IEM Katowice. But then I think just the cumulative effect of these two losses sort of really shook them. They confused them at Star Ladder.
Yeah, I mean, come on, Moses.
I mean, I have a hard time even. I mean, yeah, they're ridiculous map vetoes. I will say. I mean, okay. First thing is it's hard to look at the map veto at Star Ladder and for me to even care about it because they lost 16-2, 16-5, 16-2. So I mean, fuck your map veto. I don't give a shit what map you're playing on if that's what you're putting out into the game. Granted,
Coach
it is
Moses in the building.
SK, NIP, and Fnatic. But the other one is remember, Duncan. They did that. They're known to do that. I mean, they'll play. They intentionally play teams on their best maps. Remember when they won E-League Season 1? They did the very same thing to Fnatic. They played them on their 3 best maps, and they just said, "Listen, we're just going to beat you on them. We're just going to." I mean, they seem to have that mindset where it's we're either going to prove that we're better than you on your home ground or on your best turf, or we're just going to lose. And I mean, obviously, it's not looking too good. The most worrying thing for VP right now is. You can't. There's not even really anything positive going on in their camp after Katowice. Obviously, I mean, at least they had some close losses there. Star Ladder, they get blown out all across the board, and then even online, they are getting steamrolled. It's hard to even say they are having they're at least looking better than they did at Star Ladder online. They just lost Nuke 16-2 to Heroic the other day. They lost the second map to them 16-10. Can't exactly remember what it was, but I mean these kind of trends, it's just not looking good. But I think you have it spot on. Is if you're going to buy stock in any team, it would be Virtus.pro. They're at an all-time low right now. We've seen them bounce back numerous times when we thought that they were never going to come back from it. And we know, I still think that they're even despite some of these lows they've had over the past couple of years, they've always been contenders at the majors. So I would still have confidence in them going into the bigger events.
Come on, stuchiu.
All right, so when you think about Virtus.pro, there's something weird about them specifically, which is that it feels almost like when you guys talked about the map pool, it feels almost like they have to put themselves under pressure. They have to believe, not just pretend, but truly believe that whatever match they're going into is high stakes, extraordinarily high stakes. It's not even enough for a good land. It has to be this land we are getting revenge on Astralis, or this land we're proving to everybody we are the best, or this land is the major, we're going all in. Something strange like that. I think you said something about calling Taz the kind of an instigator for instigator. Yeah. He kind of forces them. He kind of puts fire in their belly. But the thing about that is, I see what you mean. I think the problem with that is you're not going to be able to do that all the time. You're not even going to be able to do that even some of the time, depending on the circumstances, because it's very dependent on the event, the time, and the people. And then in this case, when we talk about Virtus.pro, also whenever they break down, they eventually have to shift either to a new map, or they shift roles in the game, or the form changes, or the form changes on the players depending on the thing. Yeah, we can say it's a high chance Virtus.pro will make it back, but we can't say how they will make it back because they don't know, we don't know. So it's a very strange team.
Yeah, that's the part that's almost a bit terrifying if you try and analyze it. Is it's so unscientific to be they always do it, so they will do it again. It reminds me of some of those ridiculous predictions I've had to make in the past, where it's Fnatic will win this map, and it's all right, are they favored? Well, no, obviously not. Are they good on the map? No, that's actually one of the worst.
Those are my favorite predictions.
But isn't this map one of the opponent's best? Oh yeah, they're great on it. So who's going to win again? Yeah, Fnatic. So well, I still get paid for this one, right? They all count the same guys. Yeah,
I fucking love those predictions.
Yeah, come on, Moses.
if I look at Virtus.pro, and this I guess this could sound like a little bit like a cop out, but just I mean, knowing the guys that are like a little bit older, they're married. Taz just had a kid in January. I imagine most of the slump is due to the fact that outside of these events recently, they're just not putting time in. Like I don't necessarily even blame them. These guys have been playing Counter-Strike for what 15 years now. So I don't know. No matter how like much you are into like lighting that fire or anything like that, you just can't do that for online games. Like it's hard to get excited for online games. It's hard for players to be motivated for online games when they've been doing it for 15 years. They just want to get to the tournaments. So, I mean, this is just a situation where I think the players, they don't have a tournament until Cologne. I mean, they're not going to be anywhere until beginning of July. So, I mean, they're chilling. They're doing family things. They don't give a shit if they make ESL Pro League. It'd be nice, but they're not going to focus on it. They're going to enjoy some time off before they're pretty much away for all of July at Cologne and then at the major. I mean, I don't know that for sure. That is a little bit of speculation, but that's what I imagine is going on. And I don't think that's necessarily even a bad thing, to be honest with you.
Well, here's the funny thing, though. Like, on Stuchiu's topic of, like, them as instigators or Taz as the instigator, the funny thing is, one of the things that made me notice that is, like, obviously I always tracked when there was, like, beef between them and etc. And first of all, I noticed they nearly always, after the game, especially if they win the game against the person they're instigating, they always do, like, squash the beef, like, oh, yeah, they're still good players, like, congrats and that, which is kind of a bit lame if it's a real rivalry, If it's a real rivalry and you beat someone, you're like, yeah, just shit down your throat, I'm going to do it again next week, see you, motherfucker. Then you kick their dog on the way out or something, don't you? You don't just like, oh, good games. So, but here's the thing, right? I remember a classic set of stories about Michael Jordan, right? And this is actually one of those areas where people who write sports books tend to just be like people who are like a beat writer for that team, and they just write like, their version of the story. There's so many great sporting anecdotes that do not exist in books that I only know from watching all these games and like reading up on online articles. Like there's a bunch of stories in Michael Jordan's career, right, where people talked shit to him at certain points. And in every instance, he found some sort of game, like the next time he played them, where he would specifically wreck them in exactly that manner that like somehow fit the narrative in some sort of ridiculous anime-style plotline. So I'll give you two that are ridiculous. One was this is like in 1992 or 93. This is when like the first run of the Bulls, when they get that first trilogy. They played against the Washington Bullets, as the Wizards were then called, and there was a player for the Bullets who you'll have never heard of. He wasn't some like all-star. He was called LeBradford Smith, right? And he was like an okay player who was the shooting guard, so he was the opposite of Jordan, right? Playing the other position. And they actually had a bizarre scenario where it was a back-to-back where they were playing the same team twice. So they played the Bullets on the first night, right? And this LeBradford Smith guy had like a good game, He had one of those games where you just get on a little streak, He didn't make like 50 points or whatever. He just made like, like 28 points and he had a few in a row. And because Michael Jordan had like, an off night, because it's in the middle of their run, like he's already won like 2 championships. At that point, you're just kind of cruising a little bit. You try and win the games you can. If you see you're not winning a game, you kind of let your foot off the pedal a little bit. You go, right, I'll save my energy for tomorrow. So this guy made the mistake, right? Because Jordan didn't have that many points. And he like thought he locked him up defensively. He made the classic mistake, right, of going to the press and being like, yeah, I've never seen Michael miss shots like that, man. Like, I guess I just defensively got to him. So then Michael Jordan just made some sort of mad statement before the game, like, I will score as many points as he scored in the first half only. And so because that guy had scored like 36 points, Jordan just comes out the next night and he just goes mental. And he actually in the end only scored 35 in the first half. But it's still like absolutely ridiculous, obviously. Like, why you would even do that? And there's an even better one than that, because here's the difference, right? This is to show the gradation, right? There are people who've bantered with Taz, like Device has done it. I've seen a few players in the past do it. That's like the LeBradford Smith one. That's legit to kind of like beef with that guy. He's kind of fucking with you at first, right? He's poking the bear, as it were. But the one I don't get is like the Kirby one, because I'll give you an exact example of that, okay? So I think it was 97, it was the year after the Bulls had played the Sonics in the final, and then the next year George Karl, who was the coach of the Sonics, just said before the next Bulls game, like the home game in the season, oh yeah, this season, like I noticed Michael doesn't like something like he doesn't drive to the basket that much, he just tends to shoot jumpers, which isn't even some sort of diss. It's just an actual analysis of how he played at that point in his career. So Michael Jordan is obviously so like Taz, like just finding shit. Oh yeah, You're going to say that I shoot John was like, oh, yeah, okay. So in this game, he just did the same shit. He just like scored like 45 points, did like a whole bunch of like slashing moves and dunks and stuff. And then when he was scoring the points, he was just going by George Karl, just like shouting shit in his face, like, yeah, how about them jumpers, motherfucker? Like it's so ridiculous. Because in that example there, it's like, dude, that is sick that you did that. Like the storyline is sick. But you do realize this entire thing took place in your mind, right? That guy didn't even do it. He's just the coach of the other team. He didn't even do anything. So I do think that's the case. But in telling you that story, that wasn't just to show that I'm wicked at remembering stories, Moses. Within there, I hid a little nugget that I want to bring up about Virtus.pro that I think is a very relevant point, which is another reason why I think teams like VP actually can be upset like this. Like, it's not like they made it to the quarterfinals and then someone rinsed them out in a best of 3. No, they lost in group stages, which is actually where teams like VP, in my opinion, are the most vulnerable. I know traditionally they didn't lose many times in the group stage, but the problem is when you're a team who's been to like every tournament and you've won majors and you've won tournaments and you've made top 4s and you've done this so much in your career that it is commonplace, you really do start to think every tournament, right? Every tournament we've got a chance to win. So we can't just like come out the gate 100%, like full energy in on the first game, like adrenaline dump on the first map. You know, you do pace yourself. It's one of the reasons why I always used to think it was ridiculous when people made out like when Fnatic of 2015 lost the game, they were like, oh, maybe it's the end for them. I'm like, that's a bad game for them, dude. They lost in the semi-finals when someone like outplayed them completely. Like, if you're that team, you already know you're playing the semis or the final. You actually tend to have a weird upset in the group stage, or you have like a lackluster game where, wait a minute, like the Astralis CLG game, there's a perfect example. You think CLG got all those rounds on Astralis because they were both going full 100% and CLG just took it to them and had them anti-stratted and all. No, it was obvious that Astralis was like, unless you literally put yourself under 15 rounds, you're not going to see world champion Astralis. That was, we're just going to somehow try and cruise to this victory. Because guess what? We're going to play Na'Vi in the next round. So I feel like, unfortunately, that is a bit of the mentality of a VP, you know? That's why I feel like they go in kind of like cycles, you know? They have a cycle where they're getting better and better and they're more and more dangerous, and every time they beat the big team. But then they have these cycles where they gradually go to shit, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it's so repetitive for them at this point, right? And they were one of the first teams that, when like E-League was announced, they were just like, thank fucking God, there's finally an entire season on LAN. I mean, that's the environment they want to play in. But I think, I mean, just to summarize VP, I think Yanko actually put it the best way when he was just like, we need to just stop including them in top 10 lists. Just set them aside, make your top 10 without them, and just know that this team can be number 1 or you know like number 15.
You know what's going to happen now, don't you? Now fucking Taz is going to drop 35. They're just going to type in the game, fuck that Serbian Yanko. And now put me number 1 on your list, motherfucker. Then he's going to drive away in his Mercedes. Just fucking beep beep. Then drive away in the fucking distance. Yeah, exactly.
I like it.
So, okay, here's an interesting question to tie into VP, because I just thought of it actually when you were talking about the fact that obviously they know they're not going to be a pro league. And at this point, right, it's a joke that they're not, because I understand why Na'Vi in the past hasn't made it to some LAN finals, but actually the new Na'Vi's pretty good online, so that's kind of gone anyway. But VP, it is a joke. They just don't make APL finals. They don't make ECS finals. And I actually thought of this the other day. Even if VP became the number 1 team, how would they ever have like the dominant era if they have to skip a tournament because they can't make it there? If you think about it, one of the reasons why an Astralis, who's always good online as well, obviously in the past SK because they played in North America, one of the things that gives you an extra chance to have the dominant era is these LANs. EPL and ECS are actually the most winnable of the tier 1 LANs because you have half NA field and you don't just invite all the top teams. So actually, in theory, you get a weaker field than if you have like a DreamHack Masters Vegas, you know. So it actually does worry me for someone like VP. If they ever want to be the number 1 team again, they can't kind of just cruise on LAN. Like, what do you think about this, Wallaby?
I mean, the thing about Virtus.pro is like, I actually don't even buy the idea that it's like it seems more random than just the simple like idea that they're just not motivated, because when you see look at E-League Season 2 and then the WESG, they didn't do well at those tournaments. Those are super prestigious, super like, and then the WSG was super high prize money.
Yeah.
So like the idea that it's like, well, that they're missing out because of the online is like, I think they might just not be like. Maybe it is the adrenaline issue that they're just like they can only get adrenaline or like get it pumped for those big for the big tournaments. But like, I think there's something more than just like the simple like, are they motivated or are they not motivated? Because I think about these two tournaments. This was I did my first audio recording on this going into the major. It's like it's not simple because like you would assume they do really well at E-League Season 2 because they had the month break beforehand, and then they had the month break going into WSG.
Yeah, exactly. That's what's bizarre about them. They're the only team that didn't improve from a month off.
Yeah, they're a mysterious
I'm not even really worried about VP never making ESCA finals, Pro League final, or the ESL Pro League finals. What worries me the most about this is the fact that they are currently in 12th place, which means if they stay here, if they don't improve, if they don't jump over NIP, Hellraisers, or LDLC, they will have to again play to stay in Pro League. Imagine a world in which VP is relegated to the Premier, to the Mountain Dew League.
I mean, it happened.
Yeah, we saw
well,
this.
It did,
They got back in.
but they won the relegation match to stay in.
No, they lost it in a penta.
No,
they had
they
to play
lost.
that special match. Remember?
Oh yeah, they extended the
They
team.
voted them in.
Like they'll get like 4 chances. I'm sure they'll make it in one of the 4.
Remember,
that'll be a
Moses?
fan vote.
I had a whole skit where I played an ES Force employee calling us up. That just for the sake of a joke, essentially endangered our lives, mate. But
Yeah, thank
keep
you
going.
for that, by the way. Big fan of those skits.
Okay,
Adds a little spice to life. But yeah, no, I mean, I imagine that Virtus.pro just like, why would they even play in Mountain Dew League? Why they would probably just say fuck this. Like that, and that's a little bit worse. I mean, that would be interesting to see that interaction since they're a WISA team as well. But it would just be a situation where maybe we just don't have VP in Pro League anymore. This is just, I can tell you from pro player experience that no one gives a shit about online games, and especially online BO1s. There's just no way to be motivated for it, especially when you're Virtus.pro, who have been losing to people online for 15 years, that they go to a LAN and they just beat the fuck out of them. It doesn't happen as much in CSGO, but back in 1.6, certainly, for about 8 years, these guys probably got just the shit kicked out of them by cheaters, by hackers, by online players in 1.6, went to a LAN, would just beat them like 16-5, and then just call it a tournament. I mean, I don't understand how they can be motivated. I'm actually even amazed when Duncan, you always tell the story about Neo about how he knows all the smokes and flashes. I am amazed at how he has the motivation to still do all of that, to still spend hours in a server just throwing smokes after this long. That's the most impressive thing about VP to me, and I'm not going to fault them if they don't find any interest in online games. Not to mention, like I mentioned earlier, Taz just had a kid, and the day after he had a kid, he went to China, and then after China, he went to the major, and then after the major, he was in Vegas 2 weeks later. So yeah, if I'm Virtus.pro, I'm looking at July, and I'm saying we're going to be gone for most of July. I am spending all my family time right now.
No, well, the funny thing is, like the thing you said about Neo there, to me, that's an example of why the hardest people to beat essentially are the guys who actually get to cheat. Essentially, they don't have to motivate themselves. It's not hard work to them. Yeah. They legit for some reason just love to play the game. I've got a few good examples for you. So Get Right's one. He's a classic one where he legitimately, I mean, in his case, it's a little bit worrying because I don't know as much that he revels in the joy of Counter-Strike. He almost has a mad insecurity complex where he feels like it's like the Protestant work ethic, he thinks he has to work super hard, and that if he wins, right, well, now I've got to work super hard because I'm doing really well, and then if he loses, I've got to punish myself and work really hard now because I've got to get back, which is while I can admire that does feel a bit too much like that fucked up scene in the Da Vinci Code where that dude's just whipping his own back, flagellating himself, but obviously a lot less sexually arousing. So no, but here's the thing, okay, and also in other games, actually, that's exactly what the League of Legends player Froggen was like. He was so ridiculous at the fact he just loved to play League of Legends that they're already famously overworked, right, in League of Legends. We have to live in a team house and play all day. But when he would go on holiday, when it would be the off season, his holiday was to go back to Denmark and just stream from his bedroom and play 12-hour marathon sessions. And I was like, I think there's something fucking wrong with your brain, mate. And all I'm going to say is, it was literally the instant where he got a serious girlfriend, where he magically had a downswing in his career. Interesting.
Yeah, imagine that.
So,
I'll tell you a story.
But I'll tell you one thing. Wait a second. You can tell it in 1 second, but I've just got to tell you this first. I figured out one way I could motivate Taz, because obviously, right, much like myself, he is motivated by Skrilla by Gold Loss, Dragon Sickness, I think it's called in the books. So we know that the Mercedes, like, that made him get motivated. So here's my idea. If he goes down to the Mountain Dew League, we pay him $10,000 to do a Mountain Dew commercial where it's like a Weezer, like people are like protesting against Weezer, and then he walks up and hands one of them a Mountain Dew can. And see, that was topical as fuck, Moses. Edgy and topical.
Not bad.
Yeah.
Okay, Get Right. I didn't meet Get Right for the first time. I knew who he was, obviously, but I didn't meet him until like 2013 at one of the ESEA lands. And when I met him, like, he had no fucking clue, like, who I was. Like, this is, I think K Sharp he said, like, this is Jason, this is Chris, and shook hands, and he had no idea. And then Kyle was like, this is Moses, and Chris knew exactly who I was. Gary knew exactly who I was, and he went on to list every team that I had been on 8 years prior, in 2005, 2004, 2003, when I was competing. And he listed like the 3 big teams that I had been on. He listed like pretty much most of the teammates that I had on those teams, and like some of the bigger matches that we had played in CPLs. And like, this is a guy I know from talking to him now. He's always got a Counter-Strike stream on. He's always watching. I mean, he used to watch so many demos. That's how he got so good. That's how he built his game sense, and watched every single game, even when he wasn't a pro player. Back when there were no streams, you had to actually download and load up the demos, and all that. And still to this day, he just watches hours of Counter-Strike every day. Like, he doesn't go to every single event, but he's watching the games on Twitch. So, he's a guy who, you talk to him about a move he did, and he's like, yeah, I just knew that this team, from playing against them and watching them, I knew that, it was about like the minute and 10 mark that they like to make their play. So that's when I decided to peek out, because that's usually when they have the smokes in their hands. So, I mean, it's little things like that.
And that's so underrated as well, because people don't realize this. Top CSGO pros, especially in the era when they have to play so many tournaments, they don't watch any fucking demos of anyone else, mate. Like, first, half of them don't even watch themselves, even though that could improve them. But fuck watching opponents. Like, Olafmeister, I guarantee, has never watched a POV demo of, like, fucking Simple or Devices. He doesn't give a shit. Like, he just plays his style and hopes it works. Whereas, actually, funny thing is, players who really... You already have to be a great player, obviously, to do this. You can't be, like, fucking Tensky and just watch every POV and start wrecking everyone. But if you're a great player and you do that, you will get some edge. Like, I mean, remember famously in Quake, the player Rafa, because he was kind of like in Get Right's position here, where, I mean, in Get Right's case, obviously he was just too young to be a pro at the time, like when you were playing, he would have been about 12. That's not even a joke. People think that was a burn there, Moses. It's real. That he would have been about 12. So I remember that the player Rafa, likewise, when he was like 14, and couldn't be a pro and wasn't in a position to, he used to watch all the demos, all the POV demos of basically the smartest Quake player at the time, which was a player called Cooler. And then when he grew up and literally became a pro, that's actually he was the only person who could ever actually outsmart Cooler, because he basically like had studied every game the guy had ever played and then played against him. So yeah, that's certainly admirable when people can do that. I always have a soft spot for them, Stuchiu, who do you think is the most baller CSGO pro at the moment? Who's the one who has the sickest storyline, or who's just like, there's something cool about the way they are at the moment?
Who is going to be Michael Bay's eye candy?
Eye candy, huh? Okay. If you're going to talk about that, I think the best aggressive player right now is probably Fur.
Okay.
I think there was a pretty decent argument for Fur being the most integral player for SK in the first 2 tournaments they went to. But after watching all the tournaments, I'm more siding towards like coldzera as the best player right now. Yeah. But I think like Fur is like a ridiculously strong player. Like, he could easily be the way I model a team is kind of uses Dota 2 notation, where like the one is like clearly the super consistent carry. Like, you move Fur to another team, he's easily like the one of almost any other team. So that's why I think he's ridiculously strong right now.
Funny thing is, in a weird way, the numbers he puts up, I can see what you mean. Like, I could agree in a weird way that maybe he's outperformed coldzera. Like, here's the thing. coldzera's game, unfortunately, because he has like almost a closer element to him as well, where he never seemingly makes the incorrect move, his numbers actually are just ridiculous in terms of the impact. But the difference is, the reason why coldzera, this is why it just shows how biased fans are. So fans used to call Device boring, right, before he kind of got the modern style he developed this year. But him and Coldzera have had very similar styles like last year. Basically, they are the player who tries to play like fundamentally sound all the time, but are very skilled in doing so. And so whenever you see a Coldzera highlight, the reason there isn't like some sick frag movie that everyone's like, my God, it's because aside from that jump and up shot, half of his kills are like, he knows that you're around the corner, you haven't thought to peek there, and he walks around and sprays you in the chest with 3 bullets, kills you, then sprays it on the next guy with 3 bullets in the chest, then gets the third guy, and it's like, that's the most boring 3K you'll ever see, but it's like insane impact. Whereas the difference is, when Fur puts up the same numbers, that guy's ridiculous. That's like how everyone wishes they could play an MM, where on T-side, you just run in with an AK, with like completely dry, you one bang the first guy, then you like spin 90 degrees, kill the... Like, that's ridiculous shit. Like, that shouldn't be able to work consistently.
Yeah. Well, and that's why Cold's always the most consistent of the two of them, by the way. That's why that play style that he has.
Yeah. I think that's also why they... like the way I think they've been thinking about this, I think all 5 of them think this, or actually, I don't know about Phelps, but I know the other 4 think of this. Basically, the way they think about the game is similar to, basically they think about their worst day. Like, what do we look like on our worst day? And what happens is Coldzera's worst day is maybe an 8 out of 10. His best day is a 10 out of 10. His average day is like a 9 out of 10. And like 9 times out of 10, he's going to play on his average day or something like that, right? Whereas like Fur is a bit more up and down. So that's why I think there's like a problem, the identity problem within that team. Yeah. Is there's multiple reasons why, but one of the reasons is because Fur is so freakishly good right now, but Coldzera is the guy that has been this legitimately like this good for like 1.5 years. Yeah. So they want to build. They all of them think in their minds, on our worst day, Coldzera is the guy that's going to carry us.
If you went through and you took and you were talking about one of the, like, if you were trying to find the best player in the world and you took everything it takes to be a player into account, not just like the actual in-game things, but in terms of like the ones that you can't really the intangibles, you know, being a good teammate, you know, all the different things, you know, being committed to the team. I think Fur, you could make a very, very good argument that he is the best player in the world. And because I talk about this all the time with Fur, I don't know another player who could be the superstar for a team for a year, have a player join that team, step away from that kind of star role and give all the spotlight over to the newest player, let him take the mantle, you step back, and then you're still prepared to be the best player in the server if he's having an off game. And you can still do it what seems like it's on call, where it's just like, you know, he just, you know, notices that maybe Cold's not hitting the shots he normally does, and he just becomes the best player, becomes all the impact. And for someone to be able to relinquish that role, it's so difficult for players to do that. They want the spotlight, they want the limelight, you know, and for Fur to be able to do that, I think that is one of the most impressive things I've seen someone do in professional Counter-Strike. Especially considering he came back at the E-League major and essentially was the fucking star player of that team for the major when they had Fox in the lineup.
Yeah. So Wallaby, okay, continue.
Yeah, to build on that point, like like if you're gonna talk about out game factors, I think Fur's probably the prime instigator for all the roster changes. Like what I mean by that is like he's the one who like looks at the team and he'll look at his players and he'll be like, okay, we've given you, like, he'll look at like Steel, like, okay, we've given you like 6 months. Then he'll go to Fallen, like, I think we need to change this guy, and then Fallen will make the final decision. But Fur is the guy who, like, I like the way Fur thinks about roster changes, which is basically if the guy's working hard, you try to give him as much time as you can before, but then if you don't get the results, and that's when you kick him. So I think in that sense, he's been very critical in a different way.
You're saying Fur is Palpatine.
He's the puppet master, he's the one behind the scenes. Letting that
bastard.
It's kind of like the Anders Semler scenario, you know. Semler seems like the devious, manipulative piece of shit, but actually, he's the good guy. He has bought the bag man for the evil, deranged, sick, twisted individual that is Anders. And so in the same sense, that lovely man Fallen, who would never say boo to a goose, is forced to play this role of obviously one of the most evil people who ever lived. Corralho. Right, so WallabeeBeatle, here's my question. So one of the topics about this that's made this so tough for SK, and why I actually really feel for them, is that I kind of agree. Like, on paper, I think if you'd have asked them coming into this Phelps move, like, how do you want the team to be structured? You probably do say, right, well, coldzera is still fucking amazing. So obviously he's like, he's our main carry. And then Phelps is a newer guy, and he's only really played the kind of star roles. So we've got to kind of integrate him a bit. But then it's like the example of like, well, you can't really ignore Fur, though. He's just going off every game. And so obviously their problem as a team is there is this identity crisis that has to be solved one way or the other. So do you have a notion of what way you think it should go, or what way you think it will go? How will they resolve this? Because they've clearly got the talent, but which direction are they going to go in the team, do you think?
Well, it's difficult because, I mean, we think about like when they were the best in 2016 is obviously like Fallen and coldzera, and then they sort of did the double op setups frequently on CT sides. They even did some on T sides, like on Train. So it's like, it seems like that's the direction they should go on because that's the proven success. But of course, fallen off, yeah. But yeah, I mean, when like it makes sense to move away from a slower style, like if Fallen's falling off, or like it's hard to tell if how much of that is just form and how much of that is just the style. Because I think obviously like with Fur and Phelps being more the players that make contact, it's not about op picks outside on Train or something like this. Yeah. It obviously is going to negatively affect Fallen's performance, but it seems like if Fallen is dipping right now, it just makes sense to go more aggressive and go into Fur and Phelps.
Okay. What do you think, Moses? If you had to pick one after seeing the two tournaments, well, they had more than that, but what about these last two?
Say the basic question again. Sorry.
Like, what do you think the identity should be? Like, if you had control of the team, which direction would you go in?
That's hard. I think I would lean more towards I would want Fur and Cold to kind of be the instigators. I would want Fallen actually to be on the back burner, and I changed that from, I think it was Vegas, where I said they need to get Fallen back in key. But I think the big thing right now is that part of the reason why maybe we see a downturn in Fallen's performance is just because we touched on the economy to start the show, and when you have this kind of a meta where you can constantly do half buys and you can constantly you constantly have aggression at you, and you don't always have money and you don't always have a full economy, and you can never kind of guess when it's going to happen. Obviously you don't have the AWP as much, so it's hard to rely on Fallen the way they used to anchor defenses, to maybe get a pick, to maybe be a lurker with the AWP, whatever he might have done with the op. It's hard to be in a situation where you design a team to be reliant on it and then also be successful. So at the moment, I think that they have to. I think I would go back in time a little bit. I would get that coldzera and I would get that Taco duo going back up because they work so well together. Back in 2016 at clearing spots, at opening things up for each other, and then I would find ways to have Fallen supporting Phelps with the AWP if they have it, if not in other ways, to get Phelps an aggressive lurk, because I think the big thing is you have to get Phelps into the game. He's a huge impact player. I think you get him into like a position in the middle of the map, and then you kind of leave him on his own and you let him use his game sense and you execute a strategy around his positioning where he's going to be in a situation where he can backstab at the right moment, where he can cut off a flank. But I do think they have to start going away from Fallen. Yeah.
I mean, it seems like it at this point in time.
Yeah.
Yeah. The only problem with that is basically SK has been the team I study the most. If you want to look at all their map pool, particularly Train and Overpass and Mirage, a lot of what they do is map control, and a lot of the map control was given basically, there are three types of map ways you can control the map: aggressive, passive, and what I call phantom, which is I'll go with that later.
Ooh, okay.
So basically,
you're not making up weed strains here, son.
Yeah.
What the fuck? Come on, explain phantom to me. I thought you were going to say neutral there. Come on, phantom then. All right.
All right. So basically, basically in this current iteration, there's two aggressive map controllers, or basically like two guys who go wild. That's Fur and Phelps.
Yeah.
Whereas in the previous iteration, it was mostly just Fur. And then the passive would be somebody like Taco, coldzera, that combination where you run into them and then you die, kind of. And then Fallen is the guy who could have done all three, where he could do the wild peaks, but he could also play the safe spots. And then basically what happens is, because he's they do the double op, but he can also do the single mobile op, like what Device does right now, where basically basically if you put device like on Overpass, any team who has to play against device has to think device is in like 3 or 4 different positions until they finally find him. Yeah. So basically they have to deal with it as if there's like 4 offs of the map, kind of like basically he's creating a threat. The whole thing is he's creating a potential threat where you can't just run in like, for instance, like a Skadoodle would be very static, so you would know where he is. Yep. Whereas a device you don't know, so you have to treat all of his multiple positions as if he could be there until you confirm where he is.
Yeah.
What made you choose Phantom instead of Ghost? Just out of curiosity. Any thought into that?
Basically, it's just like a phantom limb. Like you just feel it, but he's not actually there.
That's not bad, actually. That's not bad.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah, that's good shit. He had an answer prepared for that question. Yeah.
Whereas we all know have it. There is no life after death or spirits, therefore there couldn't be a ghost there. The whole point is it's a phantom, it's not real, you know. Whereas when all of you die in here, you will be gone, the worms will eat your flesh, and there is no soul or spirit, despite what may be crushed in the future by, you know, women, toils esports. Of your career. Exactly, esports. Despite what you may feel there, that's not actually a real thing. That's just like the shit computer that is the human brain, and the fact that it's not programmed to experience high-level culture. You're just supposed to sort of eat fruit and have sex with anyone you want without consent, because without language there can't be consent. Right, enough about that. I've got a tangent about that. I feel that's like a video for my second channel. I feel like Moses.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to that one specifically. I don't see any way in which that video could go wrong.
I've told you many times before, Moses, consent is unnatural. So, speaking of unnatural consent, I will now proceed to ask this question. All the teams at the moment who have been hyped to be this like super competitive era, at the moment, obviously the only ones who've been consistent the last few events is FaZe and is Astralis. They're the only two who've had any consistency with these lineups, whereas everyone else has had moments that's looked amazing and moments that people have questioned them. So at the moment, you've got that whole mix of teams, the Navis, the Fnatic, SK, VP, you go down the list, G2, people aren't sure yet. I mean, obviously, all these teams can't end up being top 4. Some of them are going to end up not making it, and some are probably going to be better than we think now. So, Stuchiu, of these teams that aren't FaZe and Astralis, who are you plumping for as these are the teams that are going to join them in the top 4? Who do you feel confident in, or who do you feel like they've got a potential, or they're going somewhere? Which ones are you feeling right now?
Navi and G2.
That's bold. That's bold. I know Moses already. He's got eyebrows raised. Oh, wait, sorry. He just doesn't have hair, so they're always raised. My mistake, Moses.
Yeah.
Oh, there we
go. The fucking linguist going back to a bold joke.
There we go.
Super impressive.
Okay, that's pretty bold. You gotta give us some reasons. But back it up. Why? Back it up. Back it in. Like, oh, come on.
Okay, so for Navi, basically, I actually think they've been underperformed. I think it's really obvious. Everybody thinks they've been underperforming the entire time, because in every game that they went off, it was only just one guy going off. In this last event, we saw both Simple and Guardian going off, and that's all you need basically. Because I think even one of them alone can almost carry a game against a top team. Like you get to both of them together, and you start fixing their map pool. I don't think anybody in the world like on their best day they could beat anybody, and I think they have like this super competitive mindset like those two guys in particular to like force this to work eventually. And then I have a similar reasoning for G2 where I think Shox and Kineas can like solo. Like I think they basically proved they can almost solo kill like a team by themselves. And to put it on top of that is they all consider this like the last go round, and what I mean by that is they've tried multiple other like team roster changes.
Yeah.
So for them, they literally think this has to be the final like answer. Like if this doesn't work, we might actually have to go back and get existence or something, and none of them want that.
Tease me. So
like literally like the phantom threat of like existence is like
Phantom again. Okay, so he's the fucking Phantom Menace. You see, after all of that, existence was the Phantom Menace. Was he?
This is starting to be a menace. Fucking hell.
Yeah. So, okay, this is just the Trade Federation negotiations before he reveals himself. Is it okay?
Yeah. So basically, like from what I can tell, like they don't want to play with him, but they might not have a choice if this last team fails. So they're gonna like do everything they can to make this work, and I think they have all the right pieces to make it work.
I mean, I definitely agree on the last point there. Not that they're going to get existence. That's obviously some ridiculous like phone sex line that stuchiu feeds me when I call him up late at night. Oh, tell me more about existence. How it's going to get our kid. Well, maybe the team just does so bad at it. Yes, keep going. So no, obviously that's ridiculous. But I do agree with the premise that if this shocks leadership approach doesn't work with this team, because remember, the excuse you could always give last year is like, that's all you could do with the lineup they had last year. And it still did work pretty well for the personnel they had. But if you get the super team together and somehow it doesn't work, and God forbid you actually keep losing to teams that are tactical, it does feel like something drastic has to change. Because let's face it, there is no one left to lead any teams in France. They've got Shocks already. He's going to be there as a star player. They've all literally just escaped from fucking Shawshank Happy Prison. Like, they're not going back there. So who else is there? At that point in time, they all have to literally just come before the God Emperor and just fucking bow. And then existence rises up, obviously, takes the crown. And yeah, I'm back on that call again, Anna. Right, so Wallaby, what do you think of G2? Are you a believer in the hype? Obviously, you know, Moses was a bit more skeptical. I think he's still a bit skeptical. Obviously, I'm balls deep in that franchise. Come on, give me your perspective.
Well, I was skeptical before they actually played on LAN because, I mean, the whole storyline of them not doing well online was sort of completely overblown. But there was some logic to it, and I think when I think about teams over history, like whenever there's a one-man roster change, like thinking about like Automatic going to Cloud9, it's like it radically changes the team in a way that I usually don't expect. So I thought this G2 team could be sort of like, it could end up really weird. It wasn't like a sure thing, but I saw them play at Starletter. I thought they looked fine with the 4 spies and then the aggressive play. I mean, the one thing that I would be concerned about is like they try to force that double op sort of thing with Shocks and Kenny S. And then sort of to Moses' point, like just the way the economy works, it doesn't seem like that's completely viable at this point in time. So that'd be a concern with that team. But I think they look decent. I would, instead of saying Na'Vi, I would maybe say G2 and VP as being the 2 other top 4 teams.
Okay. Right. Why? Wait a second. Let me think. Okay, give me you've already kind of touched on VP, but is there another compelling reason why you'd put them over like for a Na'Vi, a Fnatic, a G2? Well, you picked G2, so why over the other ones?
Well, I think the thing with Na'Vi is like I understand like they changed coaches and that there was some sort of friction with Starks and that maybe has like led to these better results more recently. But I think it's just the Na'Vi lineup has just been together is just way too long. Like they've been together since August. I think they the middle of August, and they just like they had that little spurt when they first started at New York, and then Epicenter. They got top 4 at Epicenter. But I even think that Epicenter result was like overblown because that was that weird thing where everyone went 1-on-1 in like Group B or something, and then they somehow just got like the first place and got sent to the top 4 automatically. But I mean, I just think over time, like it doesn't seem like a team. It doesn't seem often that a team radically jumps in form. They've always been sort of hovering around top 8, top 10 since that very first initial flourish.
Okay. All right, come on then, Moses. You're up now, mate. Which 2 are you picking?
You're my 2 teams to join the top 4. Well, I'm gonna live by the Yanko sentiment, and I'm just gonna put VP to the side. I'm gonna act like they don't exist. Okay. Because right now
you're getting dunked on by Taz as well. Okay.
All right. No. But yeah. We'll just set them aside. So we have Astralis, we have FaZe. The teams is this the teams I want or think will become?
Fucking hell. You're not sort of psychiatrist couch. Fucking hell, just pick the 2 that are going to do it.
I would take SK and Na'Vi.
Oh, he can't give up the old SK love, can he? Still believes in Fallen.
I still believe in the boys. I still believe in the Brazilian boys. I think they have 2. I mean that the amount of skill they have on their team, and even Phelps, the fact that they're struggling through this roster change and still having some good events, I think is promising. I think Pro League is going to be a good test of where they're headed and where they're at and how far they can go. Just because it'll be like one of the few events. It'll be the first time I think they'll be at an event. No, I guess it would be Australia, wouldn't it? We'll see them in Australia, I think. But this is a team that I think with Fallen, who's like known as this kind of mastermind, I think he's going to be put to the test. But I mean, when you have Cold Zera, you have Fur, and then you have Phelps. So much raw talent on that team, and then you have Taco, who's just like this guy who will literally do anything. And I think he's still pretty underrated in terms of his skill. So I mean, that team I think will figure it out eventually. And then Navi. Was very impressed by the coach. I think although Navi and G2, I know this is kind of cheating, but they're kind of interchangeable. I think they're in pretty much the same spot in terms of where they're at as teams. Teams with, again, immense talent and just a lot of individual talent that's still kind of figuring out how to put those puzzles together. And I think the cool thing about both of those teams is I think I was very impressed with Andy when I talked to him at Starladder, and I think he was very impressed with the results that we saw out of Navi, considering, how much better they've looked as a team since Starks actually left. And then G2 as well. I think Smiths as a coach has performed very, very well. And it's obvious the kind of respect that they have as people who formerly played with him to be able to listen to him, because the things that we saw from them at Starladder in terms of like some of the mid-round aggression we saw on the CT side, the willingness to push, be aggressive and proactive on the map in the mid-round, that's something that I don't think we've seen a French team do in a coordinated fashion since, I want to say it had to have been like 2014 or early 2015. The last time I can think of them coming up with an idea of like that is when they kind of pioneered the Halls push on the old Inferno. They used to do that like a minute into the round and just get map control, get information, and be able to call a rotate. So I think they're in a good spot as well. And then I also want to throw this in there, and this is going to be no surprise.
Old Hedgemaster Pro, keep going.
You like this shit? You like this shit? No, you're going to love this one.
Okay.
I want it to finally happen. It probably will not, but I want to see Liquid finally take the North American crown. They're not going to get in the top 4. But I want to see them finally take the crown of being a consistent number 1 team in North America.
This is Liquid we're talking about, right?
Yes, I know. I realize everything that I'm saying right now. I am of sound mind. I've had a couple beers, but that's not usually an issue.
Well, let it drink. Okay.
This is a team that is so fucking depressing. At this point, it's not even about being like a fan of like the players or the team for me. It's the fact that they are the only team in North America who has been aggressive and proactive in terms of making roster changes and trying to improve as a team. It feels like they've done everything right, and they've gotten no results for it. They've gone after JDM when he was in the best opera of NA. They went and got Zeus, a coach who has 2 major titles under his belt. They went and pried Stanislaw away from Optic when he showed that he could actually lead a team to good results. They've now brought in Twist, and it seems like everything that they've done over the years, bringing in Simple, trying that out, bringing in Kusta when it looked like he was going to have promise, and they've gotten like no real return on it. If I look back at like last year at the majors, a team that got to the semifinals of one and the grand finals of the other, I cannot think of any point in time that we will have a team that has achieved that much as majors in 1 year that will still be considered a disappointment for the year. It is insane how this team has been poised to become that best squad in the region and just haven't fucking done it yet. And I don't know what the answer is anymore, but I want to see it happen this year.
Okay. Right, well, we'll keep Moses' own fantasy there about Team Liquid to the side for a moment. We'll bring that back. It's okay. I'll just put it on the side, put a little container over it to keep the flies off. So here's my 2 teams. By the way, did you actually, and I mean, I would say you picked SK, and was it G2 or was it Navi, or were they interchangeable, and was there a 4th person that you'd like to have? Fucking hell, all right. It's unreal, and now you know it's like working on the desk with this motherfucker.
Duncan, right. you had a 15-minute introduction earlier this episode, so let's calm the fuck down about rambling.
Well, listen, that was all entirely integral to the process. I had to mentally break them before I got into the stuff. It's kind of like when Agent Smith was talking to Morpheus. He didn't just say, give me the keys. He first of all told him all that shit about how humans are a virus and he can smell the stink, and then he broke into his mind. So that's what I'm trying to do here. So you went with G2 and SK ultimately.
No, Navi and G2. Or Navi and SK.
Navi and SK, there we go. Yeah. So, okay, the interesting thing here is I think we've all got different pairs then, because I'm going to pick G2, so I'm agreeing with most people here, and even half of Moses' hedge somehow. That I think G2's going to manage it somehow. The only concern I have for G2 is the double AWPing actually, because when we all said, oh, imagine the fantasy if you got to see Kenny S play with Shocks. Yeah, in no one's fantasy was Shocks holding a fucking AWP in that fantasy. Like, he was holding something else. A rifle. Get your mind out the gutter. So, enough about that. But that's the concern, is that I actually feel like not only will they do the double up, because for some reason Shocks, he has weird periods in his career where for no reason, for like 2 months on certain maps, he'll just decide he's going to AWP. And the worst part about it is, I feel like the fact that that team can be so good on force buys almost encourages it, because they think, well, it doesn't matter if we lose the AWP because we just force buy. And sometimes that'll get you out of trouble, you know. I always felt like that's actually part of what made the old happy teams be in such a precarious position, is that they always felt like it doesn't matter what happens, we can always just do a force buy. That should never be your mentality. You only do the force buy if you have to. There's a reason why it's called a fucking force buy. You are forced to do it, essentially. You don't choose to do it. So I think G2 will get past that. I think they'll be good. Now, in terms of my other team, I'm actually quite torn on this, because the two I'm deciding between is Na'Vi and SK, actually. And the big problem is I think I'm actually going to plump for SK, believe it or not. Because the thing I have about Na'Vi is, I do think that they've showed, especially what they showed at Star Series, I think they can do that more. They can be really good, and I think Guardian and Simple can play together. But my big concern is kind of what WallabeeBeatle said, like they have had the team together way too long. And even with a coaching change, I feel like there's not that much more to see from Na'Vi in that respect. I think this is about what they're going to be like. And so I think they can be dangerous, but for me, they're going to be like an upset team, you know? I don't think they're going to win big titles necessarily. And I do feel like if anything goes wrong, like if they have a little 2-tournament skid where they don't do well, I think you're just going to see a roster move immediately. So the problem is, I also feel like they've got a clock on what they can do with this line, no matter how good it is. And then the reason I'm going to plump for SK is because of the other teams that are out there, I still think Fnatic is going to live and die by the fact that they don't have a real tactician, and they don't even seem to have a style of play. They're just playing off like, we're all veterans who know how each other plays, and if we frag well, we can do anything. That's cool, but that's an upset team. That's you're not going to be dominant doing that. And then for VP, I actually, to go back to WallabeeBeatle's point about the pick ban, that is actually really disappointing to me that they haven't like flexed their muscle with the pick ban. You notice I always get mega tilted when I figured out on the desk that someone has like a clear advantage in the pick ban, and then they not only like eschew that advantage, but sometimes like go against it and like let the other team have like their best map or something stupid like that, you know. Because when you do that, it's like you just make life unnecessarily hard for yourself. So if you can win the game, yeah, it's a cool storyline, but actually in some senses it's cooler to just have all the trophies at the end and have had a boring storyline, you know. Like I don't like that as a philosophy, because to me the reason why they've started going to these weird pick bans is just lack of confidence, and that kind of shows me they're trying to do crazy shit instead of saying like, we're the best on this map, let's go to it. So as a result, I actually do feel like SK is the team that has yet to deliver on the potential, really. I actually think once they figure out the identity crisis, I think they'll be very good again. And I feel like they just look worse than they are because no one knows what their best maps are because of this identity crisis. Like if you look, if they were trying to go with the Cold Zero Fallen approach, then they're fucked. Like their map pool's in tatters, they can't do that. But I think when they figure it out and they go towards this like Fur Cold Zero pair, whatever it's going to be ultimately, I actually feel like they will end up on like a hybrid. They'll have like, it'll be like Mirage. I think they're going to have to start playing Cash Inferno a lot more. I think they'll get a map pool that's solid. And I think at that point, I do think a lot of the benefits of Fallen, etc., and the experience, I think it'll all kick in and they'll be top 4. So I'm going to gamble. I'm going to say SKG2 for mine. I'm going to eschew my favorite, my true Sith Padawan, Simple. I'm going to say he has to go to the side for the moment, Moses.
Have you ever thought of hiring out your being a map veto consultant, Duncan, to these teams? Have you ever reached out and been like, listen, motherfuckers, I will do your map vetoes for you?
I haven't. I mean, the funny thing about that, obviously, is that every pleb idiot on Reddit just thinks that it's obvious what every map's going to be, and there's, you know, you can just figure it out by the stats. You definitely can't. If you notice, one of the things I always try to explain in any of the tricky pick bans is what a pick will mean in terms of the philosophy of the team. Like, you know, normally they would pick this if they were confident against this type of a team, but if they go with this pick instead, that suggests that they're a bit more concerned. And for example, I often say there's a lot of confidence in any team that has a really strong map pool, but doesn't say we'll just play our best map if given it. Instead, we'll go to your slightly weaker map, which is something, for example, Carrigan has tried to do in many of his teams when they had faith in him, you know, and when they don't have faith, he has to just go to the solid picks of whatever the team wants. So for me, that's the key area where, in a world in which I would like hire myself as some sort of consultant, it wouldn't even be to just run the numbers. I wouldn't just tell them, this team's got a 75% win rate on an overpass. What I'd tell them is, here's the sort of flowchart of what the bans and what the picks might mean from them, especially on the ones that don't do a perma ban, teams that actually do mix it up as to what they ban. In that kind of world, I'd try to tell the team, if they do this ban against you, that implies actually what their pick's going to be in terms of what does it say about their confidence? Like, are they a team where this is a sign of weakness? Or is this a sign that they're very bold, So that's where I think it's interesting. And that's where I still think there will always be a lot of discussion in CSGO. Because, for example, that last one that we broke down in the last counterpoints of the Astralis phase one, that was so telling of both teams. Like, that actually showed me in the pick ban that FaZe really did think they were going to win that. Now, I don't think they should have if you saw the way the game went, but they really thought from that pick ban that they were going to win like 2-0. I guarantee you Carrigan thought he won this pick ban, I mean, I thought Astralis won it ultimately if you saw the maps that came out, but that's like a great example of how you can kind of tell by what came out, what the fruit was, basically, what the kind of seeds of the philosophy were. Let me think. Oh, I've got a good question. So we broke this down a lot between me and you and Sponge on the last episode. But if you notice, there's one team I left off that list there, and I didn't even include to psychologically trick everyone to not even consider them. But no one was considering them anyway. So there was a team that should have been on that list, and it was North, right? At the beginning of the year, everyone had North on that list. In fact, they were looking pretty solid. They were top fours. So everyone thought, right, well, maybe they won't be the number one, but they'll be up in that group. What do you make of North, stuchiu? Like, what do you make of them as a team, and why weren't they coming out of your mouth as a word?
They lose, man. Like,
yeah, they're losing. Yeah.
Not only are they losing, but you can't really pinpoint an easy problem to you can't even pinpoint the easy problem of why they're losing. Like, that's the essential problem. Like, is it a mentality issue? It doesn't really feel like it, does it? Like, is it just because they're too young or they want too early? Maybe. Like, that's a decent explanation, but like, put it this way, on paper, they look like a fantastic team. Like, the balance is great. They basically play like 6 of the maps right now. They have 2 pretty good stars. They have AZ, like MSL's basically been able to like put AZ in the mix without like much loss, even though I think Rubino is a better support player.
Sure.
Cajun's still a good opper. Like MSL, yeah, he's not individually good, but his tactics and his leadership easily make up for it. But you can't be losing to Immortals and Hellraisers. Like, I don't understand I don't understand. There's something blocking this team, but I can't figure out what it is. It's like a very complicated puzzle where I'd have to like join the team and then find out or something.
Okay. I mean, there are other ways to figure things out, but that would be a very extreme way to figure it out. Just go and join North. Okay, yeah. Wallaby, do you have a theory on this? I haven't seen you give much comment on North, actually. So what's your perspective on North right now?
Yeah, I haven't looked into them super deep in like an article or video or anything, but like just my general impression is like it seems like they just don't have the star power of Astralis. They seem like a weaker Astralis, and then when you think about their map pool, it seems like a wide map pool, and they just added cash into that as well. But it doesn't seem that they have the depth of any of the other big teams, and it's like a question mark as to why they do that. Like, why can't they succeed, and like why can't they compete on the level of like the best teams in the world? But it just seems like beyond that epicenter where they won versus Virtus.pro in the finals, I believe. Yeah. They always seem to sort of just get to the quarterfinals or the semifinals and just never seem to be able to be at the very highest level. Maybe it's just the roster isn't strong enough.
They are just a very uninteresting team at the moment, aren't they? I don't find any excitement in that team, to be honest with you. Like, yeah, we keep saying the names of Config and Magisk and everything like that, and Cajun and AZ, but doesn't actually like. I mean, it just seems like they have like name power at the moment. They don't really have a lot of substance behind it. I think part of it is they just haven't kind of. I think that epicenter win, I don't think it necessarily affected them in any way, but I think they're just a team that hasn't found a good way to adapt. I think what they're struggling at finding is what every team struggles when they win an event or when they become like into like the actual tier 1 team list, is that, this is when teams start looking into you, and this is when you have to have more than just you have to be more than just like a one-trick pony. And I feel like at the moment, the two guys that powered them to that epicenter win were Config and Magisk, and I feel like at the moment they've kind of been figured out as individual players. I think they are young players that don't have a lot of experience, that just haven't kind of come up with that, like, you know, that next wrinkle in their gameplay that's going to change things. And as a team, they just seem to be not necessarily predictable, but just they don't kind of have, you know, a next step at the moment. I don't really know.
I think it applies in terms of the personnel and the map pool. Like, I think Billy Beatle's point there can be expanded, which is that in the map pool, their big problem really is that this is why, if you remember last year, I remember it was very specifically based on Dignitas late last year that I started changing my definition, where normally people said map pool depth to mean like how many maps you have. And I changed it so that it was width meant how many maps you have and depth meant how good you were on each map, you know. And the whole reason I changed it was Dignitas, because if you remember, when Dignitas broke out, they had the same problem. They weren't the best in the world on any map. Like on Nuke, VP were better, and actually Nip turned out to be better. Okay, then they had like Mirage, but like Mirage, a lot of teams played. And then they had Cobblestone, but they weren't the best Cobblestone team. I mean, you had Virtus.pro, you had SK, you had Gambit. So the problem they had right then was like, they didn't have like the auto win in any best of three. Like they could play. That's why they've had so many best of threes. They almost won 2-0 that they lost 2-1. It's like so fucking depressing when you see it. But I think it goes beyond the map pool. It goes to the personnel. Like they're the only team I can think of all these like potential contenders we were listing off here who don't have a superstar. They have a lot of good players. Like they have a lot more good players than most other people. But that's a big problem. They don't have that one guy who every tournament's going to be the superstar. In fact, remember that series they lost to Hellraisers? So Cajun B was going off the first two maps. He had like 50 plus kills. Then he just chilled out the third map. And then other games, okay, Magic's will look amazing for a half. And then just kind of just another player. AZ actually had the odd map where he was really good, but ultimately his stats haven't been that great. Config, just because his style of play, I don't think he's suited to be like the number one option. You know, it's too aggressive, it's too risk taking. So I think that's a problem. They don't have like a reliable sort of foundational piece, a cornerstone to build from. Whereas you look at every other team, right? So Astralis, in some senses, they have the most ridiculous luxuries because they also have a very deep team of players. Well, wide team, I guess I should use the same terminology, but they also have Device, who is unbelievably good game to game. But you go down the list, okay, SK has Coldzera Fur. Then you go, the only team I can think of in that top X number of teams is Fnatic. They're the only one who also don't have the superstar. But you go to Na'Vi, Simple, and possibly Guardian. You go to G2, KDS and Shocks. Like every other team has like an established superstar, and at the moment in the North team, it's not even that it's like, well, which of the four will it be? Let's face it, it has to be Configure 8 or Magic's. Because AZ's had his chances, and I did an interview today actually with Pimp, which will be coming out, where when he talks about AZ as a person, unfortunately AZ is the kind of person who doesn't kind of like offer an opinion, you know. He's not like a forthright guy, he's not a very driven guy in that sense. So if you do just put him onto a team like FaZe or Now North and don't give him like the star role and say, you know, you're going to do this, I'm going to set everything up, he's not going to like demand that. He's not going to come to the forefront and do all this stuff. So Cajun, we've already seen, I feel like Cajun's career is a bit tragic in as much as he's like an 8 out of 10 player for me. And he's pretty good, and he's fairly consistent, and he knows what he can do. Like, he knows, for example, if you ever watch him AWP, he's not like a fucking nutty AWPer who hits like the most ridiculous shot. He just always hits those like clean, smooth shots that like you know what angle mid-range he's going to get them at. But that means that it is on those young guys. One of them's got to come forwards and develop further. And I even kind of do... That's the reason I put forward that theory that maybe it all came too fast being number one, you know, like winning Epicenter, and we all thought, right, is this their chance to be the best? Because they are like 19 years old, I think, both of them. I think Config and Magic are both 19, and usually that is when players haven't figured out their identity yet. So I don't know which one it's going to be, but I still feel like the logical one is it has to be Magic's, you know. I've said his name 5 different times now. The fact that I can't even say his name the same way, how am I supposed to get consistency out of this guy in the server? Decide what your fucking name is, then decide your style, then decide to get these motherfucking nuts out and start being a top player. By the way, I could only do that because I have a desk, so I could make that slamming sound, like some brass balls just smashed on the table. Like Alec Baldwin in that movie, you know, like... Glengarry Glen Ross.
Yeah, why not?
Go look it up. All you need to know is it's on YouTube, and the title of the video is "The Greatest Scene in Movie History" or something like that. It's like 10 minutes long. It's not even a spoiler. It's just straight fire. Right? Come on, someone hop in on these points. Not nuts.
I call on Count Dooku.
Let's see if he remembers.
Yeah, all right. No, I mean, there's flashes of Magic's Boy being like a superstar player. I mean, there's that game on Cobblestone in the quarterfinals of the E-League Major where he had that 38. Well, he had the really sick first half, but not the good second half, right? I think was this pointed out in the last Counterpoints episode, but yeah.
I think
anyway,
we vaguely touched on it. Yeah, we call that having a Hiko. By the way, you have like an epic deciding game first half, and then the second half, you just go shit. There's another half of the game? Fuck. I have spent all my energy. I will now lose.
So cruel.
All mates. Listen, he's a close friend of mine, so I am allowed to hurt him personally in public. So
Yeah.
Come on, Wallaby. Keep going.
yeah. So I mean, he, like you said, he's a young guy. I mean, it doesn't seem maybe he can do it more consistently. I remember it's E-League Season 1, he was also going up really hard. So like sometimes he has it, but like, yeah, I don't know if he can do that consistently and be like the true like star, like superstar level player, like something like a device, right? I mean, I don't know if he's ever shown that sort of level on any sort of consistent basis. He'll have like the flash. Maybe a better example instead of devices like a simple, where he can start having like a game crushing performance and just start doing it regularly, like he did at the very beginning of like September, October when he first joined Navi.
Yeah. I mean, that's the interesting thing, obviously, is that these two young players, Config, Magix, they've both shown very different playing styles. They've both had fantastic tournaments where they've been like MVP type players, but they haven't managed to get that consistency where you see the best from them all the time. So basically, what we want, Moses, what I want is my favorite dish from Stuchiu's family's country of origin, which is the cream of Sum-Yung Gai. That entire thing was legit analysis, but it was also a setup to the most, probably the stupidest joke anyone's ever said on this show. Okay. Stuchiu, do you have an opinion on the North Superstar debacle? Reasonable.
Basically, they have no choice but to write it out. There's no obvious answer, so that's the problem with this puzzle is there's no obvious answer because there's nobody below them that they could like recruit and be like, this guy is better than one of those two. There's nobody like that. But I think what's gonna happen is was it Sydney is coming up? I think that's their last chance.
Yeah.
Or I actually think their last chance already passed, but mentally, it might just be for them the last chance where they're like, okay, we can try this one more time. But if they can't beat FaZe or they can't beat Astralis at least, or like they have to beat one of them at least in a best of three, then I think they have to look at themselves and say, you know what, we aren't at this level yet. We have to change something. It's going to take time to develop, and they're going to have to accept the reality that they are not championship contenders.
I think you go look at fucking Valdi if you're North.
Valdi?
Like, yeah.
Instead of who?
Instead of who are you picking?
Fucking AZ.
But then who's
Bold?
who's on the support role then? Or
God bless. Duncan, tell him not to do this to me.
All right.
Tell your boy
Stuchiu.
not to do this.
Listen,
Tell your boy not to do this.
I realise at my academy that we all know that support players exist, and we know that some people have to throw those flashbangs so that the real stars can run in and bang some flashed out motherfucking domes. But people like Moses, who idolized the tacos of the world, he doesn't believe that support players exist.
Okay, so I put it this way then. Who facilitates Rivalde? Magis or Config?
What's that?
Who's going to facilitate? Like, who's going to help him? Who's going to help him like make those aggressive pushes? Who's going to help him like do whatever it takes? Because it has to be it's probably going to be one of them. Because
I'd probably make it. I mean, it doesn't really matter. It could be either of them depending on the setup. Could be MSL. Could be Config. Are both decent options. I mean, you guys. Why do we always forget that if you look at the way SK operated when they won 2 majors, Cold Zero was the support player.
Because Cold Zero is a once in a lifetime generation talent.
No, he's not.
The shit
Okay.
Oh, that's That's it. Everyone on Twitter. Moses just said Cold Zera not a once in a generation lifetime talent. Moses said that.
Cold Zera is a once in a generation talent.
Oh, here we go. Hedging it back.
Not
Come on.
in what he did in the supportive role. Anyone can do that shit. This is what I don't understand. Cold Zera is the best player in the world of last year, and all he did was set up the entire support Taco for 100% of the time for the first 45 seconds of the round, get him in a position to become an entry fragger. He used all of his nades, never had to worry about it, got Taco in a position where he could make his own play and Cold Zera would just follow up with it. So, I mean, what the fuck? You don't need to be a support player to throw fucking flashbangs for other people. If you can't throw flashbangs and set other people up for kills, get the fuck out of professional Counter-Strike. This role
Coach
does
Moses
not
is back again,
exist.
okay.
Yeah, we're talking about NA now, or are we back to the liquid topic, or
Reasonable, right? Not a bad little fight. That was not a bad little salvo he fired back there, Moses. I like that. A little bit of spice to it. Yeah, okay.
A little bit of phantom lightning.
So in that case, Moses, if we had to take what Stuchiu was saying and what you're saying and marry it together, does that mean that you would have, for example, is Valde going to do like Cold Zera, and is he going to set up config early in the round, config's the entry fragger, and then Valde goes in and cleans up the kills or whatever? You know, is it going to be that sort of a scenario you envision?
It's yeah. I mean, it's worth testing it out. I mean, it's one of those things where when you go into a team, maybe that's the way it's envisioned at the start, and maybe it doesn't work out, and you switch something up, and maybe you pair them up with Magisk, or maybe you pair them up with Cajun, and see how they all work together. I mean, we act like when you're an analyst and you're looking at this kind of a situation, it's not just as easy as like mixing and matching play styles all the time. Sometimes it doesn't work out. Sometimes they don't communicate. Sometimes they just don't fucking like each other and can't put that aside to be a good player inside or good teammates inside the server. So you have to be able to mix and match if that's needed. And that's why you have to be able to throw flashbangs. You have to be able to support anyone in any kind of a situation. So yeah, if I was going to start it out, at least in that situation, I would tell Config and Valdi to kind of pair up and just see how it goes. And if not, then you switch things up and you maybe put him with the Opper. Maybe it's Cajun and Config, maybe or Cajun and Valdi. Maybe you let Valdi get aggressive while Cajun holds an angle with the AWP. Make sure he can't get picked upon from a certain angle. It could be a number of things, but I mean, if you operate under the notion that there has to be the support role of someone who is not as talented or doesn't have the opportunities to get as many frags, and he's just going to throw flashbangs, you're going to have a player that's a liability. That's just the reality of the situation. You need players who can be stars when they're called upon and also be a support player when they're called upon.
See, that's why to me the Danish scene is ridiculous right now, because you have North and Astralis both have completely banging rosters with like really good players in them. So it's like if you're the Danish scene as a whole, if you forget like the interests of each team, you can't lose, because either those teams do amazingly, in which case great, you've got two amazing teams, or one of them doesn't do that well, and then Valde is literally sat there waiting in the wings and is easily good enough to be on either team. So if either Astralis or North doesn't do well, he can come in, and then here's how ridiculous it is. What happens then? Whoever gets kicked goes to one of those teams. Like, if you put a Dupree or a Cajun B on Heroic, they'll still be fucking a really dangerous team,
And then they become 3 years down the road from now, in 2020, they become the new French scene, where they have all been kicked and all played together, and they all start to hate each other, and they have to form some kind of a super team out of the remnants of their old friendships and relationships.
Okay. Danish Shuffle.
okay.
Danish Revolution.
Let me think. Who have we got left to discuss here? Oh, I've got a question for you. So, anyone who has seen any recent tournaments knows that Thorin, not a believer in Gambit. Quite frankly, been downplaying the things Gambit's done. Think they've been a little bit overrated. And Wallaby here wrote an article that I referenced frequently on the last event, where he pointed out that basically, what the strengths of their cobblestone were, and they were quite interesting, because it wasn't like, it wasn't like one player just owns at this spot, or they always win this half, etc. Like, for example, as I said, they weren't winning the T half most of the time. It was actually CT half they did a lot of damage on. So, what is your take about Gambit now? Because obviously, as we talk now, CS Summit's going on, and that's a tournament that, aside from SK, it's not that sick a field. Like, if they really were,
SK's not even there.
They are.
Are
SK's at the CS.
Yeah, you're right.
So the point I'm making is, they obviously haven't won any big best of 3 series in a while. So if Gambit really is the team people who hype them think they are, they should be like winning this tournament, coming top 2. This is a double elimination best of 3 tournament. So what is your take on Gambit as a team beyond just their cobblestone?
Well, beyond Cobblestone, it's like for this tournament specifically, I think it's like a challenge for them just to get second place. I think it's obvious like NIP and Gambit are sort of the two teams that are going to sort of fight for that second place. I mean, if you look at the map pools of Gambit and SK, they sort of neatly align with when the Perber bands are taken out of the equation. But like, I think the thing is with the Gambit NIP situation is that I think it's an interesting pick ban because it's very similar to the Astralis FaZe pick ban because they both ban Mirage, like Astralis and FaZe both ban Cobblestone. So I was trying to think about that today. Like, okay, so Gambit might ban Cash or Nuke, and then NIP might probably ban Cobblestone, and then it sort of goes from there. Maybe. But then it sort of gets pretty close in the middle of their map pools. I mean, well, Gambit is also good on Overpass. Maybe they can get a win there, but NIP is also sort of pretty good on Overpass. So I think it's an interesting matchup, and it's also a double elimination, so it's probably going to happen twice if there's not some crazy upset.
Yeah, because obviously at the end of the last tournament, I mean, I remember someone put a ridiculous stat on Twitter that, like, you know, on Overpass and Cobble, they were like 8-1, and then on every other map, they were like 1-7, which is like you were saying before, Moses, should I hire myself out? Like, at this point, do I have to get fucking skywriting to write across the sky? Ban, Cobble, or Overpass, whichever you don't play, you fucking morons. Meanwhile, North and VP are like, give them Cobblestone. This will work. Like, why are you doing this? What does it take? Why are you playing the game on Nightmare mode?
Yeah, that seems a little bit crazy to do something like that. I think this tournament, the CS Summit, looking at the team list, I think if SK doesn't win this, that's going to be a massive, massive disappointment and setback for this team. I don't think Gambit even has a shot at winning it, if I'm honest with you. I like Gambit. I like watching Gambit. I think they're a strong team. I think there's strong upset potential and then a lot of skill. But yeah, I mean, they do seem very one-dimensional or two-dimensional, I guess it would be, and in terms of their map pool, in terms of the maps that they can actually play. And then obviously, I think I don't think they got over it. They still haven't won a best of 3, have they? No. So I mean, when I look at this tournament for SK, I don't see a single team here. I mean, there's no other team that I would even put in tier 1 in Counter-Strike outside of them, and I don't see another team that is particularly dangerous in best of 3s that will be able to challenge them. And then even beyond that, for Gambit, if Adren has another tournament the way he did in Starladder, which was a very poor tournament for him considering his recent form, then they're even at risk of getting upset by a Cloud9. Or Liquid potentially, depending on how they look. I haven't seen them play in this event yet. I think the Cloud9 Optic game is going on currently at the moment. So I mean, they are a team that I think benefited a lot from the fact that Adren had this incredible resurgence of form from DreamHack winner to essentially Kiev. Yeah. I mean, he had like a really good 5-6 months in there.
Sure. Did you see the game on? Well, you didn't see the game, but versus Envious, Adren looked pretty good.
I saw the stats.
Yeah, he smashed them.
That's also one of the reasons, though, why I actually didn't believe in Gambit, as bizarre as it sounds, because obviously what we've just said there is they have a player who, amazingly, was actually playing like a superstar almost. He was playing incredibly well, and if you hear his style of play, which is he's incredibly good at decision-making and positioning, well, that's going to win you tons of games, because the guy's going to win all these clutches. Like, even in some of their dodgy games, I've seen Gambit win so many on Cobblestone. They win so many 1v1s, 1v2s at that fucking B site. Like, if you can win a lot of the clutches, you will essentially get out of trouble for a bunch of games that you would otherwise have lost. But that's also why, in a way, I don't also believe in Gambit's style even. Because I just don't think that's like you always get raged when people say, he's the clutch player. It's like, that doesn't exist. Like, you can be a god at clutches, and even then, there's a reason why your stats are probably wins 40% of clutches, that's not a viable strategy for placing top 4 in the long run, Is right, this guy's just got to win 5 1v2s. Like, oh, well, cheers. No, not too difficult a task then. I will just get on with that, shall I? It's a bit of a ridiculous predicament to be in.
Yeah, I mean, especially he was winning a lot of those. I mean, he was almost living up to that. I mean, yeah, and that's the thing I think with Adren as well is they need I mean, obviously, this team is going to be ceilinged by the development of guys like Mo and like Hobbit, who have a lot of potential in them, but they need more. Then they need more consistency. I mean, Hobbit's actually been pretty consistent and pretty solid, all things considered. It's kind of Mo that you look at and you're like, we need you to be that high impact opper. I also think one thing with Zeus as an end game leader, yeah, he's phenomenal, and I like a lot of his decisions making as a team, but I am a little bit worried that he keeps this team a little bit too kind of slow. It feels like you need sometimes to be able to pick up the pace and switch it up and allow your players to be the ones making their own decisions outside of like a team strategy.
You know, speaking of which, this is actually ridiculous. It just reminded me. There was a tournament, and I won't say what tournament it was or which player, so I won't give away the details, Moses. But there was a tournament in the past at some point where at the event, behind the scenes, it was known that during one of the event days, so not the end of the event, there was a player who went off and had a threesome, right? And they had a threesome, but this is the maddest detail. The very next day, you'd think, right, after having a threesome, they're going to play like shit, right? They're going to be like hungover. They're going to be out the game. No, this is what's so mad.
Wasn't he?
Not only did he have the threesome, but he then went on to win loads of 1v2s. Like, this isn't even a joke. This is like some sort of ridiculous narrative that doesn't make any sense.
I remember this.
It's like he thought to himself, like, well, I can just take two at once at any time. And then he took that into the game and started doing it. That is one of the most ridiculous narratives. That made me actually think, years ahead of Anders actually telling me it was a fact, that we are all living in a simulation, in fact.
Yeah, that is the first sign of a simulation.
Right, yeah. That's like whoever had to write the actual script for what happened in the game, which is like a simulation in a simulation, was just like, hey guy writing the main simulation, can I copy your homework? And he's like, okay, but don't make it look too much like what I did. It's like, sure thing, got it. It's like, obviously scribbled it out, like put his name at the top, like sound. That's just what I did, you idiot. That's what happened in real life, on it. So
that is such an epic fucking story. That is so fucking epic.
And one day in the future, when I really don't give a fuck anymore, I'll just start putting the names into those stories, and that will be my new career.
Dude, we're gonna see a Reddit thread based off this episode of people who just go guessing, list by list for the past 3 years, and the players who had all the 1v2 ones in a single event.
I mean, the irony, of course, is that they're going to go, right, shortlist. Zipnix will obviously not scratch that out. We've got go down. So, Adren, haven't they got Accutane over in fucking Kazakhstan?
Doja?
Okay, going off that one as well. Dosia.
It's not a bad shout. Not a bad shout at all.
Yeah.
I don't think.
Not bad. Maybe that's where that reputation came from. Okay, Stuchiu, what do you think of Gambit?
They're a fun team. I like watching them, but like everybody said, their map pool is way too shallow. Like, if you want a comparison, like in terms of a team, they kind of remind me of, not in playing style, but in like strength of map pool, it's the very old Keyd Stars, like Luminosity, where they're only like they can beat a really strong team on only one map. So they're kind of similar to that. So what happens is they can upset a team in the best of one if the other team doesn't respect that one map.
Okay.
And so basically for Gambit, and the thing is, like, Gambit kind of got lucky in the sense that nobody understood beforehand that literally Cobble and Overpass are their only two good maps. So what's going to happen now is the only way they can upset is if you get like Exist giving everybody advice on how to do the veto. Like, that's like the only way I could see them upset like a tier 1 team.
I always make that point, you know, that one of the problems of being the underdog team is if you ever prove yourself to be really good on a map, you think to yourself, right, I've arrived. It's like, no, you have not arrived, because now people will just ban that. Now you have to play your second best map. Like, there's a reason why Astralis still almost wins all these events without getting to play Overpass. No one lets them play Overpass, you know.
Mm-hmm. So the only thing left we have to figure out is if they can find a third map now. And this event, Summit, and then the following event, I forget where it is, but they're going there. So between these two events, they need to prove to themselves that they can. When I mean prove themselves, I mean they have to beat some of these teams, these tier 2-ish teams, on a third map, and like show they can do. They have like a potential third threat.
Yeah, probably has to be Inferno. I think, you know, like that's the obvious candidate since no one's godlike on that map yet.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of an interesting point, because one of the big, like, at the point that Gambit was coming to rise like right on DreamHack Winter is when like Cobble was like super important in the map pool, and everyone was kind of playing it because it had been so important like in the months leading up to that. That was kind of the map where if you didn't have it in your map pool, you just couldn't win BO3s. Now at the moment it almost feels like Nuke is that map. You know, every team is starting to play Nuke. It's kind of in the middle of everyone's pool. Like, I mean, even the best team on it, Virtus.pro, is very up and down. NIP's the other good one, and you never know what you're going to get out of them. So, I mean, even Astralis just kind of plays it because they have to, because of bans. So, I mean, Nuke is kind of that crux right now. So I would expect it to be Nuke or Inferno being the two newest maps, where Nuke is probably more played than Inferno at the moment, it feels like. But Inferno being the newest, and like Duncan just said, no dominant best team, leaves it kind of open for the taking.
Okay. So we all laughed, as we always do, at the hilarious running joke that Moses still believes in NA teams. But for real, Team Liquid have, again, hoarded all the talent. You know, they've gotten all these talented players. They've gotten all these on-paper upgrades. What do you actually think of the new era of Team Liquid, WallabeeBeatle? This Twists-infused one where they've got Stanislaw, and we still get to see them play a LAN, but as a result, give us kind of your fresh take on it.
Well, the thing with, I saw an interview with Stanislaw today with Launders doing the interview, and he said something really weird. He said that he doesn't anti-strat other teams at all. He thinks that's just like a bad approach.
Okay.
Which I thought, was a little odd. And then he also mentioned that he's going to have to. No,
my mistake. Yeah, keep going.
He also
all the memes.
He was having a hard time integrating JDM because like Mixwell is a very aggressive offer. He when before Tarek was in the team, he was sort of always making contact first or trying to make contact first. So it's a big change for him. And then, I mean, I think Twist is an overrated player. I mean, I just think it's just like the combination of I think just the identities of Sick and Twist got blurred just on TSM and Misfits.
Yeah. I mean, in what respect?
Well, I actually think people actually think he is like a pure entry player just because that's sort of what Sick did. But I mean, he's like a risk taker. But I think he's slower, and I think like what the Liquid's problem has been, I think, is like they have like the entry duo, but they have like a really good entry duo with Liege and Nitro. But the thing is that they never seem to be able to go off in tandem. So I don't know. Maybe someone thinks that like, okay, now it's Twist and Liege, and this is going to be unbeatable. But I don't. I think it's got to be like. Yeah, Liege and Nitro still, I think, because I don't think Twist is this like aggressive player that people I think assume that he is, or he's not an entry player rather than an aggressive player.
Okay, Moses, come on, what's your take on Twist? Because I have to say personally, like I know people. Here's the thing: I don't blame him for what happened on the TSM squad, etc. And obviously Misfits, they weren't around long, but. I do feel like they're one of the teams where just not playing a lot of LANs made them a little bit overrated. Because obviously TSM played that ECS, and then they barely played any LANs. Because famously, NA teams just get upset in the qualifiers, don't they?
Well, yeah, that was the thing as well. Is they had that one good run at ECS where I mean, much like Gambit, they were just very good on Cobble, right? And then they didn't even win all the Cobble games. Nope. And that was the excitement. They like lost 14-16 on I think to like Fnatic and Astralis, or I can't remember who exactly they beat. But I mean, they got top 4 there, which is cool. But yeah, we didn't see him at a LAN for like months after that. So unfortunately, I think, much of the excitement like kind of died around them. And I mean, even as players, when you have that kind of an event and you never get the opportunity to build on it, you just kind of feel like you're in some fucking stalemate. You just feel like you're in hell not hell, but you're in like limbo, right? You're not going anywhere. You're not getting worse. You're not getting better. And nothing is going on. So it's just very uninteresting almost. And I think that's a little bit what happened. And the unfortunate part as well, I mean, if you look at that team also, you have Semphis and you had Finesse, who were kind of like both going back and forth, or I mean, changing the leadership in that team. I think FNS did it for like maybe like a month and it went back to Semphis. But as like new and young players, you don't get a chance to like build any kind of identity as a player within a team. And that's like a surefire way to kind of stunt your growth as an individual player. So getting out of there is going to be cool. I honest to God, I don't know what to expect out of Twist in this team. I know he's got talent. I've seen him do well. I haven't seen much of him recently, if I'm entirely honest. So I mean, I'm hoping By the way, I hope that I impressed upon the parallel between him and Automatic in the sense that they're both coming from very similar situations, the same team, in fact, when they went over to these teams. Now, it would be a leap to say that Twist is going to turn into the same kind of impact that Automatic has had in Cloud9, but he's certainly got the talent to be a player that can add a piece to this puzzle. I think the big thing that this just adds onto is how much confidence do you have in Zeus as a coach, as a guy who's won 2 majors, as a guy who was there when SK kind of built into the dominant era? Because he's not only got to figure out how to teach this fucking seemingly mentally damaged team into getting JDM as an opera to be effective. Liquid's never been able to have an effective opera. And then on top of that, you have Stanislaw, who, while he was an in-game leader that had success with Optic, he's only been in-game leading for 5-6 months, and doesn't like the anti-strats. So you also have to do that. And now you also have to help Twist kind of adjust to this level of play and this style of being in a team. So I think there's a lot on the plate of Zeus at the moment for him to work on. But again, I mean, like I said earlier in the show, they seem to make the right moves. And one of the big reasons why I wish this team would just succeed is because if you look at Cloud9, they also have a lot of skilled players, but they are the team that has been content to be the #1 North American team. They don't want to make roster changes. They refuse to do it. And in fact, bringing Brax to this event just shows you that they're not making roster changes, because if they were going to make a change at some point in the near future, they would have brought someone that they were trying out. Instead, they brought Brax, who can never play in a Valve tournament. That will never be a permanent pickup. But if Liquid does take that crown, it will be very interesting to see the reaction of 2 players that the NA scene holds like gods, Stewie and Automatic. What do they do when they're no longer the best players on the best team? What do they do? Because they have the leadership of Cloud9. They are the most solidified players in that team. Are they going to respond and say, fuck it, we're not being the second best team in North America. We're just not. Okay. Like, do we move on? Do we cut players? I think that would be just a very interesting narrative to watch play out in the North American scene.
Stewie 2K and Automatic. Team Liquid walks up to you on the beach, slaps your girl's ass. What do you do? Okay, reasonable. Why is that like so? Why did he keep repeating that phrase over again? What do you do? What do you do? Stuchiu, what do Team Liquid do with Twist, do you think? Do you have any expectations?
This feels like deja vu, or I don't know exactly what you call it, because it's happened like 4 or 5 times. Like, Team Liquid is a funny team if you think about it. Like, this, if I had a vendetta and I was God and I had a vendetta against any CSGO, like, Liquid is the team I would create, because the trick about the trick.
Wait, come on, again. Say that again.
If I was God and I had vendetta against NA CSGO, Liquid is a team I would create, because the trick to torture is you have to give them just enough hope to hang themselves. And like, Liquid is that team where, like, they give you just enough hope. You're like, oh my fucking God, they did it. They had such a great event, and then everything falls apart. And then you're just about to give up, and then they make another change. You're like, is there hope again? And then they do it, and then it all falls apart again. And this keeps happening over and over again. This is like the 5th iteration of this happening. So, like, this is what Team Liquid is to me right now. Like, can I be tricked like a 5th time? Like, I don't know, but
you can be. Just accept it. Just let it in. Just open your heart.
But the thing is, like, I do think Elige is the best NA player, actually. So,
okay. Well, here's the thing, though, Stuchiu. Like, first of all, when you ask, can he be tricked a 5th time? I have legitimately picked Team Astralis to win like at least 2 or 3 major series that they've got completely shit on and dunked right in my face, and I've still come back and done it again next time. Now, the fact that ultimately that all worked out and we all pretend like that didn't happen, it happened. Does hurt a little bit, I can't lie. In fact, I think literally Fiflaren said to me before this last one where they did win, he was like, I thought you promised that you stopped doing this after MLG Columbus, because that was the one where I went all in on them against Na'Vi in the semi-final, and I just kept telling Fiflaren, like, yeah, I'll never do it again. Don't know what I was thinking. Why would I ever pick them to win? They'll always just break your heart, won't they? It underwhelmed. And then the next event, obviously, I was like, I have a pick to make. It's like I was so confident, But the problem is, when you come to Team Liquid, for me, part of the reason why some of the last lineups were so inconsistent is also because they could never figure out the in-game leading position. Like, having a Dren, no matter what anyone says, was not a long-term strategy. For whatever reason, as an in-game leader, he was fairly limited. Like, you actually go and interview the people who were ex-teammates of his, no one says, this guy was a genius in-game leader, you know, he's fantastic, blah, 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 all the rest of it. So they had to replace him anyway. Their problem was, first of all, Valve obviously like chopped the legs out from Peacemaker so you can have being the in-game leader. Hiko, it didn't work. Nitro only wants to do it for like a week and then gives it back to someone else repeatedly. So to me, this is all about the Stanislaw move. Because if Stanislaw somehow doesn't work out as the in-game leader, you probably do just have to blow this team up at this point in time. Because you are, to follow your point about torturing NA, you constantly put together all these good players, but then don't use them because you don't have a proper team, you know. They're never a proper team. So surely Elige can't stay there forever. Surely they don't just keep taking 15 tries on Nitro. To me, it's all on Stanislaw. Like, if he can turn this all around, they have potential to be great. But that's a big if. And I kind of agree with you, Moses. Like, it's not like he has pedigrees in the game. He's only done it a little while.
Yeah, and it's. I mean, actually, I don't know if you blow this team up. To be honest with you, just because. I mean, obviously they've spent a lot of money on getting these people, so probably don't want to allow that to happen.
Buyouts.
But also,
got buyouts though, in it.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, JDM was not cheap, certainly. But also, I mean, where do these players go? Like, if you leave this team and you guys all split up and go to other teams, like, where are you going to go?
I mean, that's
like,
the fantasy, isn't it? You could like fix every other team using Team Liquid.
Yeah.
Ironically, they can't fix themselves.
You can fix a lot of teams.
Yeah.
Who could you? I mean, what?
You have to understand, Team Liquid.
I
Team
mean,
Liquid prior to getting Stanislaw was basically someone. He was a guy in a coma who's brain dead, but all of his organs are in perfect operational function. So why let him just stay alive on the life support machine? You know my feeling, Moses. Pull the motherfucking plug and let's start harvesting these organs. Shout out to stuchiu's people again there. So let's get these organs and let's spread them around where they're needed.
I try and get Rush on the team before I do anything. I go
they
back.
They tried that already.
Didn't they?
They tried.
Yeah, but I go back to it. I try again. I mean, if they don't, I mean, I don't know when their kind of time frame it is when they need to like feel competitive or whatever like that. But I go back to it. I revisit that shit, especially because I think you're right. The person who's got to be on the hot seat for Team Liquid is certainly Nitro. But then you look over at Optic. Rush Mixwell, I would take either one of those guys over Nitro and probably even JDM at this point. I would say just get in the team, see what happens there.
That's the thing. The idea of a Rush Elige entry combo is pornographic. That's straight fire.
It is.
It's also
better,
fucking
it is
white
better than
supremacist
Nitro at his peak than with Elige. If you have like Rush versus Nitro,
if it went
at his
well,
peak,
yeah.
Good times.
Mm-hmm.
See, I'll refrain from making any sort of experimental laboratory jokes involving Elige because it doesn't feel appropriate, does it? By the way, the joke there for everyone is a lot of mice have like albino features, so I'll explain these ones for you. This is Sesame Street right here. Sesame Street right here. So, okay. Come on, Wallaby. You've been quiet for a while, mate. You have to dive into this fray about Team Liquid.
Wait. You gave... Don't. I want to do the Liquid thing because you gave stuchiu the opening question as a test for his Sith prowess.
Yeah.
We haven't had WallabeeBeatle create a question.
That's what I'm just saying now. Oh, right. We'll do that after this then. Wait, first of all, address Team Liquid, WallabeeBeatle.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was weird, like what you guys were saying. It was because, like, basically what you guys were suggesting is just to recreate Optic, just to get Rush, Mixwell, maybe not Tarek, but like pretty much everyone else besides Tarek just on Liquid.
So basically, listen, Stanislaw, you idiot. Since you've left a team that was good, we will force you to play on that team again by just recruiting all the same players to this team. Welcome to Team Liquid. Okay, I like the plan. It's certainly interesting. It's bold, for that way.
Well, the other thing in Launder's interview today too was Launder's made a really good point that like basically what Team Liquid is today is they think they're gonna have success trading with the exact same team, just trading down from Simple to Twist. I mean, how's that work?
Do you think they're gonna have success downgrading from Simple to Twist?
Yeah, like how are they gonna do that? If Twist is obviously a massive downgrade from Simple.
Here's the issue. I think Simple was such a fucking handful when it comes to being a personality and a teammate and like a mental case within that team that they will convince themselves that his skills were not nearly as impactful and important enough to their success as they actually were, just because they fucking hated being his teammate. I'll tell you, I guarantee that's pretty much what's happened.
No, I know.
I don't say that as a bad thing, by the way. I just think that's the case. I mean, I think in a similar situation with the stories that I heard from that Team Liquid era, I probably as a player would have felt probably a very similar manner as well.
No, you have to understand, like in that team, they don't have any qualms whatsoever about the fact that Simple's not there. They really have all like mind fucked themselves to like think that like, okay, yeah, maybe he was good at the major, but we were all really good as well. It's like it would be like if all the remaining members of Nirvana who didn't blow their own heads off with Nova shotguns actually were all like, no, I was kind of the star of Nirvana as well. It's like, were you though, bro? I think there's a reason why there's no more fucking Nirvana songs, because the brains are all over the wall, aren't they? You didn't have that shit. You just played the drums, and you were just a guy who was a hippie.
Too soon.
Is it too soon? Didn't he die in like 1994
like 2 decades or something.
I mean, reasonable. Okay. I mean, Star Wars hadn't even been ruined back then, Moses. And see, there we go. Got the trigger in there. Managed to work that in there, the needle. Okay, so yeah, WallabeeBeatle. Moses was correct. You must now face your test. I mean, I'm going to switch up the sci-fi theme. This isn't going to be like the Sith test. This is going to be like in Dune, where the Bene Gesserit woman actually puts like Paul's hand in there, and he must like endure the test, you know, not take his hand off. Dom Jabbar, yeah. So, okay, what question would you bring up? What topic do you want to talk about? We'll make this the closing topic, so make it good.
Yeah, well, the idea I had when you guys were talking about at the beginning of the show was like basically what I was saying about Stanislaw with him deciding not to anti-strat at all. His logic was like, well, the team can obviously change from the last time they played, so it's like it's binary whether or not your anti-stratting is going to be effective. And then Launders made this really weird point where he said, well, I don't think it's ever been effective to anti-strat. It's never worked. Which I mean, I thought that was ridiculous. But when you think about it, like, well, what are the best teams in history? NIP, Fnatic, LDLC, Envious. I mean, these weren't super tactical teams. I mean, the Sean Gares, the existences of the world. I mean, how accessible have they been? Like, is it really impossible in CS:GO to just be like a heavy tactical, heavy anti-strat team and for it to work?
The problem I have with that theory is that if you look at the best teams of all time, it's not a coincidence that most of them actually had like the best player at the time as well, and that they had like the superstar of all superstars. And unfortunately for me, when you have like a ridiculous superstar who kind of defies the rules of the game, you can kind of make up for inadequacies elsewhere. So I would say when Very Games were amazing, that like I actually did think they had the best tactical team as well. It's one of the rare times I think you've seen that. I think at the moment, Astralis actually has, in my opinion, the best tactical team and the best team. And I would actually say a perfect example who exists right now to show that anti-stratting is very important is Device. Because the key detail is, Device as an AWPer was already, very good in past years, 2015, 2016. But the difference is he was more of like a standard AWPer back then. He just actually AWPed a spot that he played in, or he had like an area on T-side that they said, go to this spot, and he took his shot, okay? And actually the only qualm with Device about AWPing was that in his earlier days, if he didn't feel confident, he just wouldn't do it, basically, because he felt like, it's like a waste of money, So the logic has always been for people who are scared to AWP, if you miss an AWP shot, you just die outright. But if you die when you rifle someone, you probably get like a couple of bullets in them. So you feel as though you're doing more when you do that. But the problem is, if you really were integral as the AWPer, you needed to have that weapon because you can't play the same spots with a rifle, you can't play the same like angle, you can't provide the same information. So the key to me is, the reason why I say Device is the ultimate example of the power of anti-stratting is because Device doesn't watch a demo and then say, right, Pasha on this demo was on this corner, so I'm going to jump out with a flash and aim right onto that corner and like pre-fire with an AWP, and I'm going to see if I kill him, and it'll be the most godlike anti-strat ever. No, but what he does is he has scouted and used heat maps for all the other AWPers he plays against, and he's even gone a level beyond what I've ever heard of, which is he has heat mapped himself. So that when it's a key round that he can't afford to be killed on, he goes to a spot he doesn't play a tendency spot from. Now, those two things combined, in my opinion, have actually allowed Astralis to be so consistent, because Device now doesn't need to necessarily get 3 kills with the AWP, but you are constantly having to worry about where he is. It's almost like old Get Right when he was the lurker, you know. It's not that you had to shut him down. It's that you were so worried at all times that he's behind you. So that would actually make you go slower, or you'd like leave a man behind where you could have done a 4-man rush on a site. And so everyone has to account for where Device is, and he is now having ridiculous AWP impact, where whatever kill he does get, like, gives you a chance to just outright win the round. So to me, he's like a player who's proved the value of anti-stratting. To me, what people like Stanislaw and Launders have made the mistake with there is they think anti-stratting literally means like round 1 they do this, so round 1 we do the hard counter. Yeah, that's where people like Sean Gares failed in the past. Like famously, I don't know, you guys weren't around, so the storyline was for the first major, when the team Complexity, now obviously the Cloud9 people, when Nothing, Swag, Sean Gares, Semphis, Hiko made it past Astana Dragons. That was the upset win in the quarterfinal of the first major, and in the semi-final they played Fnatic, obviously the team that went on to upset the major. And this wasn't the Fnatic or Olafmeister, you know, it was the one that was JW, Schneider, Devilwalk. But what happened was Sean Gares only had like, you know, a few hours. Like his game I think was the 3rd or 4th played in the day before, so he had maybe like, you know, 3 or 4 hours he could scout the next team. So he actually literally thought, I'll just hard anti-strat them. So he went and watched their demos, and in the semi-final, he had hard counters to the strats. And what ended up happening was, he got ultra shit on, and his team lost both maps 16-8. And the reason why, is I can't blame him for this, is he couldn't have known this, but because Pronax had only just joined the team, and that was his second event, well, we all now know the most famous thing about Pronax is if in the mid-round he doesn't like the setup, he just switches it up on the fly. So all that happened was when Sean Gares did all these like hard counters, like, you know, had like 3 people around a corner that would break the strat, like Pronax would just read informationally, like, it seems like the other site's weak, we'll just go there. And so they just got absolutely destroyed. So I agree, if you try that, that's a ridiculous gimmick, you know, that's like some flying V Mighty Ducks shit that can only work once. I just think that it's a bit limited to think that that's what anti-stratting is, you know.
Yeah, I agree with that entirely. And also, I mean, one of the big things, I mean, okay, so here's a couple of things. One is Stanislaw, obviously he cannot think that anti-stratting is going to be successful, because at the moment, not only is he working on becoming an in-game leader himself, I already mentioned he's inexperienced in that role, okay. But he's also got, you know, new players coming in. He's got a whole team that he's got to put together, and they shouldn't be focusing on anti-stratting. They're not at that point as a team yet where they can look outside themselves to have success. They need to establish their own game before they can really look at how they can adapt their game for a specific opponent. 2, anti-stratting definitely works. We've seen it happen time after time, especially when you consider the run that Cloud9 made in the summer of, was that 2015 when they did the Pro League finals, ESWC, and I think ECS, the Face-It stage 2. Yeah. They made, you know, the finals of all 3 of those, didn't win any of them, but, you know, they did that primarily. If you go back and look at the comms from the Pro League finals especially, you can hear that they know exactly what's coming, and there's a reason why they made 3 straight finals in 3 straight weeks, because after that, when there was a break, teams started looking into Cloud9 and anti-stratting them, and then all of a sudden their plans kind of fell apart. I think the key with anti-stratting is you have to do it more kind of like how Device is doing. You have to do it on a smaller scale, because obviously if you're a team that relies on that, you're naturally, if you're anti-stratting on a massive level like that, you're always a step behind your opponents. You're always relying on the fact that they're not going to change anything. And as soon as they change something, you're a step behind. And anti-stratting them might like put you on equal level, but then you're a step behind again as soon as they anti-strat. And to minimize the effects of anti-stratting, most teams have gone away from those like really structured components, really structured rounds, and these are the smokes we're going to throw, these are the flashes we're going to throw, and this is when we're going to do it. You see teams playing looser. This is why, you know, the individual player is having much more impact and much more important in teams now than it was, you know, 2 years ago or a year and a half ago. You have to have that looser style so that you can't get anti-stratted. So in turn, if you're going to look into your opponents and try and do some of the anti-stratting, it has to be on a little bit smaller of a scale. It has to be like, these are the tendencies, not this is exactly what they do, and this is exactly how we can counter that, but this is what you need to be expecting from this guy. This is what you need to be expecting from this A defense. So that's kind of how the game has evolved in that sense.
I'm not even sure you need to go back that far to find anti-stratting working. Like, I think CLG did it to Gambit when they let the map beetle go all the way to Cobblestone, right? And then, like, even like very specific players, like they're for whatever reason they're just too stubborn. Like first guy that comes to mind is Happy. He'll just play the same way, and then everybody knows he's playing the same way. But that's not a very complicated anti-strat. But
It's funny though.
yeah, it's funny. But basically, the problem with Sean Gairs was, well, there are a few problems. First, like he basically burned himself out because he was basically, as far as I know, he was literally doing everything for all like the anti-stratting and all that stuff. And that's not sustainable over a long period of time. And you have to understand that you can't do that all the time. You have to know when you pull that out and who to pull that out against. But I do think the understanding the tendencies is just in general a better way to go, especially now with so many events. Like I don't think a team can like spend that much extra time just anti-stratting.
Okay, so Wallaby, you intimated that you kind of saw a logic to it because like the best teams, the most dominant teams in history, perhaps didn't do that so much. Was that just a cheeky hint at something, or is that your perspective on it when you thought about it?
I mean, I thought it was so strange to hear that, but I thought there might be like a certain logic to it, and I don't know like exactly what the teams are doing internally. So it's a quite like, did SK heavily anti-strat? I saw an interview with I think Ballin recently where he said they don't actually study other teams. I mean, I think that was the headline. And if you actually listen to the interview, like he doesn't speak English like perfectly. It was unclear whether he was referring to not preparing for the Chinese team he was playing, or if he just didn't prepare for the other teams like all together. So I was just curious, like if that theory had any basis for you guys.
Maybe that was part of the clash then, is that what made SK so good was the creative tension between Zeus, who was like, listen, we got to do 2-3 hours theory. We've got to all know all the positions and how our opponent plays. And then Fallen was like, but only pussies try to win all the time. And there we go. You always wonder, don't you, Moses? Whenever I have that sort of spring to my step when I'm doing it, it sounds like it's analysis. That's the trick, isn't it? But it's going somewhere in the end. The punchline.
You're like the Team Liquid of analysis. I start getting really hopeful. You have this deep, insightful comment, and right at the end, it's just a shit post.
Okay, well, that's NACSGO for you. So, okay, I think that's a good topic to end on. So, normally, I'm quite brutal with the endings. I just press that button. But being as you two plebs, still trying to grind it out, still trying to make it in life, probably won't. Like I said anyway, when you die, it's all over anyway. You can't take it with you, so do what you can. Each of you, tell us what your most recent article was. So, stuchiu, what was your most recent article and what website is it on?
My most recent article was NA Stranded Nowhere.
Reasonable title, okay. NA Stranded Nowhere. To be viewed on Slingshot.
Basically it's a reference to like Kerrigan. Like basically he's saying when he was on Astralis, they were stranded nowhere. They wanted to get to the new world, but every time he took the ship, he'd go back to sleep, and then either Zonic or Device would turn the ship another way, and they had no idea where they were going.
Or took a shit.
I guess either would work.
Speaking of shit posting.
So every time Carragher went to sleep, Zonic took a shit, and that's somehow your problem with the Astralis, is it, Moses? Are you mentally ill or something, right? Okay, WallabeeBeatle, what is your most recent article, and on which website can we peruse such an article?
The team that will control, train, and Overpass will rule the world, and that's on the .esports.
Okay, yeah. Not a bad site. Has a few good articles on there. That's the end.
What up guys, this is Jordan Gilbert and
Hello guys, this is Gabriel Fallen, player from SK Gaming.
Salut les gars, c'est Shox de G2.
Hey guys, this is Spencer Rico Martin.
We work with some of the world's top pros to teach you how to take your game to the next level with constantly updated training content. When you're done watching and want to train or warm up, just a few clicks will put you in your favorite training mods like Deathmatch. But why warm up for a match on Mirage by getting shot in the back on Dust 2? That's why we built Duels. Real fights on real maps. 1 minute in Duels is like 20 rounds of real CS. The best way to train and warm up. Exclusively available on Boomeo.com.